What's that?
Welcome, everyone, to a very special episode of the In the Paint Show featuring the 2022-2023 Preseason FAB 50. I am your host, Chelsea Hopkins. You'll have to excuse my voice a little bit because I recently came under the weather, but I'm here and I'm happy to be with you guys. I am with Ronnie Flores and Umana as we break down and rank the best high school teams across the country. We have a lot planned for the next few hours, from special guests to key matchups and players to watch. Who is the best team in the country? I have Ronnie and Ani on the hot seat all day, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Ronnie, Ani, how are you guys doing today? I hope better than me, but I'm here. How's it going, guys?
Doing great. Doing really good. You know, this is going to be a good show. We got a lot to talk about. I know Ani had me and go back and forth a little bit about these teams. It's been a long preseason. I think we're tired of talking about it and kind of tired of the fall. We kind of want to get into the games that count.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Ronnie. Yeah, definitely going to go back and forth today. And salute to Chelsea, you know, coming on the weather, coming in, being the host, you know, that's a piece right there, you know.
I'm with you, Ani. I'm with you. Okay, well, before we get into it, I just want to kind of start with a little bit of recent high school basketball news. I mean, there's been a lot of stuff going on in the media. Ronnie, I'll start with you. Talk to me about Donda Academy. What's happening there?
Yeah, Donda, obviously they have some good talent. They had good players, and they basically, the kids, they're taking courses online. They're part of the academy, but didn't really go to the school that was located in the greater San Fernando Valley area of Los Angeles. And then all this, stuff came out of Kanye West comments, and, a lot of people weren't happy with that. So again, then we had a situation where it looked like they sent out an email to the parents and that the school was going to close. Again, the players themselves are not going to that school, so we're wondering what's going to happen. So at the beginning, it looked like obviously the players were going to disperse, but then Jaylen Brown of the Boston Celtics and others got together and tried to keep the players together. Ani, but at the end of the day, as the news comes in today, it does look like those players won't be there. J.J. Taylor's reportedly at San Ysidro with Mikey Williams. And why don't you give us a little update on what you hear about Robert Dillingham? And then obviously the third player on that team, A.J. Johnson, looks like he's going to SoCal Academy. And so again, people are trying to keep this group together. And we saw that group at Border League, but it doesn't look like they're going to stay together if reports are accurate on it.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to stay together. Robert Dillingham's going to Overtime Elite. They've been trying to push for him pretty hard. I know he went out there and played against those guys in the showcase a couple weeks ago and did good. So they've been trying to get him for a while. And since what happened with Donda shutting down, he's there. And then AJ Johnson, he's at SoCal Academy, and both really talented guys. We got to see Donda a little bit in the Border League. You did, Ronnie, for firsthand. So, it's hard to stick together, especially when you got that much talent, and you gotta enroll in schools and got to get into their coursework and stuff, in a minimal time period. So, that's just what's happened.
Yeah, the timing is very odd.
I'm super hopeful, that all these kids, are able to find new homes. And it's just super unfortunate that, they're kind of being affected by the actions of somebody else. And ultimately, they just want to play basketball. And, we're seeing them disperse to these other groups. And I'm hoping that, best of luck to those kids, basically. But, we're seeing these things happen, in the high school, with various high schools, because something's recently come up with Duncanville. I know you're familiar with the Texas area, Ani, being a native. So talk to us about that school.
Yeah, so Duncanville, they technically go say 4-time state champions because that COVID year, but back to back. But 3-time state champions. The UIL just really came down on them hard. Removed their state championship that they gained this past season, and suspended their head coach David Peavy for a whole season. So I know there was stuff going on in the course, rolling him eligible, Anthony Black, and this is all kind of over. They said over an eligible player playing, and that's Anthony Black, who's currently at Arkansas. But I don't know what happened. As far as with the courts, don't have all that information, but I guess UIL has the freedom currently to come down on Duncanville, and they came down on them rough, and not even just the boys' side, the girls' side too. The girls' side is going through the same thing this second time in 4 years, and they're on a 3-year probation right now. So Duncanville, it's not a bright moment for them right now.
Ronnie, have you seen things like this happen, fairly often? Like I'm personally not a fan of just punishing the kids. Like, Ani mentioned the name Anthony Black. Anthony Black has moved on to college now. So basically, the people that are left in the program are, facing the consequences of having him be a part of a program that he's not even a part of anymore. So, is this something that we see often? What do you think, Ronnie?
Yeah. So, this is always happening in high school basketball, meaning a team will be forfeit losses, forfeit wins, and obviously in Duncanville case, forfeit losses for the wins they had last year. They only lost one time on the court to Richardson, and they won all the rest of their games, including a game over then number 1 Montverde Academy. So Anthony Black did play in those games, and Anthony Black received a court injunction to play in those games. So Duncanville did know that there was some risk in there, but I believe they regarded that the reward outweighed the risk mightily, heavily. So they went ahead and got the injunction. They got the legal injunction. He played. And again, what we don't know is how he would have been affected, or how the team would have been affected if Anthony Black didn't play at any of those games. Obviously, Ani was at the game. We talked about at the podcast that he went in like Superman, the game that he came off the bench and he played, and it was just a surreal scene. But yes, as you mentioned, UIL is in charge of athletics in Texas for public schools. Obviously, we want schools to follow the rules. We want all schools to follow the rules. So to answer your original question, yes, there's a bunch of teams in my rankings. If you go look at the website, go look at the final rankings for you, you'll see asterisks by many teams. They got stripped of it. They had a forfeit win. They had a forfeit loss. This happens almost every season. What it doesn't happen, Chelsea, and has never happened before, is this has happened to the #1 team in the country. That's why it's really noticeable. Duncanville's coming off the finishing #1. And like I always tell people, if you followed the rankings for many years, and many of you have, so shout out to you guys who are listening and watching on YouTube, is that it's about the on-court results. So obviously Duncanville is going to be, have an asterisk. And like Ani said, that's unfortunate, but no team's going to go, hey, we're #1 now because Duncanville got a ruling off the court that, they had an ineligible player. It's just unfortunate, but we're not going to go break up the rankings, go back in time and break them up and see what would happen. Ani, they won the state championship game by 20. So that team doesn't feel that they're the state champions. And I'm sure, Chelsea, in your regard, you played on a lot of high-level teams. What happens on the court down the line, you're going to say, hey, we were the conference champions, or, hey, we were the league champions. You're always going to remember that. I think the players feel that way. Again, I don't want to speak for them, but I have a feeling that that's the sentiment they have.
I mean, I think the players definitely feel this way. And, we're seeing it in basketball now, but I think of instances like Reggie Bush, for example, when they kind of stripped him of his Heisman. I know it wasn't a championship trophy per se, but that's the most prestigious, award you can get in college football. And I don't feel like anybody felt like he wasn't deserving of it because he was the best player. So it kind of makes me think of like, it's pointless to kind of always put in these punishments, because if the game was already played, if the player was already dominant, like that's what's kind of always going to remain in people's minds, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you look at it like 5-10 years from now, like we look at, Kimball teams and even some Dallas Madison locally here, they've been stripped of some titles, but no one talks about them getting stripped of titles. It's like no one cares, you know what I mean? Especially when you look down the road, this is just an immediate, oh my God, like this.
Yeah.
But, long-term, like, no, it doesn't matter. You're going to remember them going back to back to back. And, that's what happens with UIL. There's some other kids that have been ruled ineligible, on some of these higher level teams that we're going to talk about locally in Texas. So, I mean, it just what comes with it.
Yeah, it's definitely something that happens. It doesn't always happen to the highest level team. And obviously, this is going to be national news. People are going to follow it. And, the one team that probably looks at it like, dang, I wonder what happened would be Corona Centennial, which finished #5 last year. That was their only loss. Was a 5-point game. Ani, you were at 75-70, I believe. So Centennial's probably looking like, dang, could we finish #1? They lost that game on the court. People care about what they did on the court. As you look at #2, they finished #2 Montverde last year for 221-222. They won Geico, but they had 4 other losses. So I don't really think Montverde's looking at it like, hey, we're better than Duncanville. They played in a game they lost at the buzzer, and that's probably what they feel. And again, it's unfortunate for everybody involved. But yeah, I would look at a team, and I'm looking at how they finished last year, and it would be Centennial. They'd be like, man, what you just don't know what could have been if Anthony Black had never played. Obviously they took the risk, and like you said, Ani, they're still going to be a good team. We'll see where they're ranked as the show goes on, where they fall in the rankings.
Absolutely.
No, go. Oh, you say something, Ani?
No, I was just saying at the end of the day, like, that's still a really talented group. Whoever they have in the head coach is going to do a good job. They have a strong staff, and they have a chance to run it again this year. No David Peavy hurts, but 6'8's tough, but that team is talented enough to run it back.
And real quick, Chelsea, before you go on to your next segment, just should be noted that the Duncanville Independent School District released a statement saying they don't believe any UIL bylaws were broken in this case. That's the statement school district of Duncanville made. Again, that goes against what the UIL ruled, but that's where it stands right now.
Wow, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with them, but the show must go on, and so does Duncanville in our rankings. So before we get to, dropping these rankings, Ronnie, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the history and the purpose of our rankings. I want our viewers to understand how we do it. We're doing our Fab 50 show. We have a long list of teams. I wanted you to provide a little bit of insight of how we do our breakdown. So can you start with that?
Yeah, the purpose of the rankings, really is, to have add interest to the game. Public interest to the game really is the reason people know about Duncanville. I live in Southern California and know about Duncanville. Somebody who lives in New York knows about Duncanville. The people in Texas know about the good teams in California. It adds public interest to the game. And it's a great barometer for team performance, especially in boys basketball. The teams travel around the country. The best teams with good players play in multitude of tournaments, as long as they don't have restrictions from their respective state association. They can play in Las Vegas at the Tarkanian. They can play at the City of Palms in Fort Myers, Florida. They can play at the Chick-fil-A Classic in South Carolina. There's a bunch of events they can go to. Chicago Elite Classic, the name goes on and on. So it's a barometer for team performance. When we look back and we say, how good was that team, Ronnie? Well, you go back and look at the ranking and say, yeah, they were ranked 30th. They were state champ. That's pretty good. They're pretty good. They probably had a couple of D1 guys. I don't know how good they are, but for any particular team. But then you look at a team and say, man, they finished number 2 or 3 in the country. One thing I could always think about when I think about the final rankings, Ani, is Yates when they finished number 1 in 2010 with that high scoring national scoring record team, is that Newman Goretti finished number 2. They only had a 1-point loss to Yates, and I won't forget it. So it's a barometer. Again, why do I remember that Newman Goretti team? Because they finished number 2 with 1 loss to Yates by like 1 point in a big tournament. So it gives a barometer, Chelsea, for team performance.
I like that. So talk to me about when you're deciphering between these high school elite athletes versus prospects. What's the tool that you use to do that?
Yeah, on our regular In the Paint show, we always talk about players. That's one of the things we talk about a lot with you, with Ani, with our guests that we have every week. And many times a high school player is elite versus very, a prospect. So sometimes a team has a lot of prospects on it, or a highly ranked prospect that's ranked by Rivals or 247 or ESPN. That doesn't necessarily mean his high school team is good at all. But we've seen many instances of that. So sometimes when you have an elite high school player, it kind of deciphers between that, and you don't have to go on these rudimentary things such as length and upside and his vertical jump and things like that. It has nothing to do with where a team's ranked. One instance of that is I like to bring up is Jalen Brunson of the New York Knicks. Jalen for Lincoln's Stevenson Lincoln, where he lived in Illinois. Their team was highly ranked. He had a lot of honors. He also played for the McIrvin Fire, and the McIrvin Fire had great players at that time. So they had Cliff Alexander and Jalil Okafor. They couldn't win the big tournament, but after they graduated and went on to college, Jalen Brunson led that team to a big-time Las Vegas, event, national, championship there in Vegas in the summer. So he had the grassroots accolades, and then his senior year, they won the state championship. And I don't think people thought like, well, how good is he? He's a little slow-footed. He's not the #1 player in the country or anything like that, but it shows you that his performance and his production kind of outweighed any measurables he could have had. And that's one of the purposes of the rankings, is to reward players who produce.
I like that. Ani, do you have any thoughts to add on just kind of the purpose of our rankings?
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, I like when Ronnie was talking about just the high school elites versus the prospects, just the guys that aren't just a long-term, even when we look at the rankings, there's some guys that you say, oh, man, you see them on paper, they're really good, but they're just not productive in the high school level yet, and they're maybe just underclassmen. So, really talking about guys that are more production and consistency than just, guys that are just long-term or high-ceiling guys.
Correct.
Gotcha. Ronnie, so you touched on the purpose. Well, you touched on a couple things in the purpose, but I want you to share with our viewers how these teams are actually getting ranked. You touched on a little bit on what they did in the past and stuff, but is it strongly based on last season? Is it based on their returning players, the new additions? What are the key things, the key aspects that help you decide how a team's going to join our Fab 50 ranking?
Yeah, the keys to how to get ranked is obviously to have good players and have a good program, so build some consistency. Obviously, the past does matter, because like Ani mentioned, if you have multiple state championships in a row, that's going to grab attention and grab the pollsters. Follow your team, get in contact with the coach, and shout out to all the coaches that turn in forms and questionnaires. And then also, I notice obviously if you have a good team, if a coach has a good team, and again, I start this process like in early August, reaching out to the coaches. Some of them are perennial; they know I'm going to do it every year. We talk. But sometimes a team will have a good team and it's just kind of coming along out of nowhere, you know that they're good when the coach responds real fast. And the coach is like, I'm going to have a good team. They send emails. They feel they're going to have a good team. So with that, you play a strong schedule. They tell you about the schedule they're playing. Again, we talked about some of those tournaments they're in. Obviously, City of Palms leads the way. There's some others like the Chick-fil-A Bass Pro in Springfield, Missouri is really good in mid-January. And then we have these hoop ball events that are across the country in December and January. Where if you get invited to those, you probably have a good team. And the event operators reach out to myself and other guys who do credible polls and you know, how good is this team going to be? So play the strongest schedule possible. That's number one. If you have good players, you're going to play a strong schedule. And then obviously defeat a ranked team. That's pretty simple. If you defeat a ranked team, that most likely means, at least in my poll, that you're going to be ranked ahead of them. Again, I can't talk about how other people do other polls, but if Team A beats Team B and Team B beats Team C, then that means Team A should be in front of Team C.
I like that. You spoke a lot about just head-to-head victories, earning a high ranking in your state, but what does it mean to root for your rivals necessarily? Like if I'm worried about my team and what we're doing, why do I need to root for my rivals to increase my ranking?
Yeah, root for the rivals is a statement that means, hey, when you play a team on your schedule, you want to build your resume. Well, the teams you beat, you want them to have a good resume as well. So especially two teams that know each other well, let's say like Bishop Gorman in Vegas and Liberty in Vegas, you know. So if Liberty beats Bishop Gorman, they don't want Bishop Gorman to tank. They want Bishop Gorman to keep beating other ranked teams because that helps their ranking. So the teams on your schedule, you don't want them to dump. Now, sometimes they could dump. You know, sometimes teams going on a slide if they have big losses, but you want those teams to keep winning because that helps your ranking. Again, going back to that Yates and Newman Goretti example in 2010 with that great team with Joe Young at Yates, you know, Newman Goretti was obviously helped in their final ranking because, you know, their only loss was to Yates. So I always want to root for the teams that you beat. And obviously to beat ranked teams, you got to play a strong schedule. So it goes back to the first point. And then obviously if you don't play a lot of ranked teams because you are limited or you couldn't get into the event you wanted to, or even if you have rules in your state association that you can't, you know, travel too much. And there's especially a lot of that in the Midwest. When we go to Ohio, Indiana, there's a lot of that. They have travel restrictions, Chelsea. So you better dominate that state. And that's where that point comes in. Dominate a non-power state. Maybe you have a long winning streak, or maybe you have a couple state titles in a row, or you have a pattern of success.
No, absolutely. And you mentioned just how we're here to evaluate the teams, but in doing so, you automatically have to evaluate players as well. Sure. I see at the bottom that you have to have a top recruit on your team. And Ani, you know, that's obviously a key to having some sort of success. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's like college basketball where the top team generally have multiple pros, right? It's like in high school, you got to have if you're going to be a nationally ranked team or in the discussion of the best team, you have to have a top recruit. It's the same thing. You need probably at least two. So I agree with most teams. If you're really trying to get to that point, you got to have one or two.
Yeah, and that's when you have a top recruit on your team, Chelsea, goes back to the schedule. You're going to get invited to the hoop hall. You're going to get invited to TARP. When you have a top recruit on your team, it opens the doors to get invited. We're in a social media driven age. If you have a top recruit that people follow on social media or on Balls Live highlights and people want, you're going to get invited to events. And when you get invited to big time events, that's where the opportunity lies to beat other good teams.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? We have a lot of top recruits and elite players that we're going to feature here today throughout the show. I really want to get into our first segment as we start ranking the teams, and we're going to feature teams 31 through 50. But before we do, Ronnie, you just talked about the purpose. You talked about how we ranked. We're going to be breaking down our rankings into different segments. And I want you to share with the viewers basically what kind of goes into the process of the segment that we're in at this moment. So if we're talking teams 31 through 50, Ronnie, I want you to give me, you know, is there a huge disparity? Is it hard to rank these last teams? Is there a big difference between these last teams and maybe the teams that were on the bubble that didn't get in? Just provide a little bit of insight of how we got to this point.
Yeah, so when we break the teams down again, we're looking probably about 100, maybe 125 teams that are good. Again, some teams are not going to get in, but that's the name of the game. But yeah, to answer your question, teams 40 through 50, you know, those teams could be replaced by other teams. So when you lose and you're 45 or 44, if you take a loss, you're probably going to be out the next week, you know, as we do the rankings on a weekly basis. And in late December, January, and February into March, you take a loss, you may not stay in. You better have another win, or you better have another key win. So, yeah, those teams are in the rankings, but they easily could be replaced. And again, when we do the national rankings, we want to make it national in scope. Obviously, Anis, we know there's some hotbeds. Your guys in Texas will pop their collar and say Texas is the best teams. There's teams in the Southeast. Florida is good. New York and New Jersey, especially New Jersey's been really strong lately in the last 10 years. And then obviously out west of California and some other places, they have their own, strong points of why their teams are the best. But, with the regionality, what I say by that is I'm not going to take that 9th team from Texas, from UIL or TAPS, when I can take the first team from Mississippi or the first team from Wisconsin. I'm probably going to give credence to that team. They're the best team in their state. But again, their rope or their leeway is a little bit shorter, Chelsea. So to answer your question, yes, there's teams that could be in for these teams, and these teams have to keep winning. It's unlike the higher tier teams. If they take a loss, they're probably not going to drop all the way out.
So, Ani, to Ronnie's point about maybe not taking the ninth team in Texas, you could maybe argue, though, that Texas is just the strongest state all around. And, we're so much better than the #1 team in, wherever. So what are your thoughts on how you and Ronnie came up with this? Do you agree with this notion that that's how these last several teams are?
Well, the 9th best team in the state of Texas is better than any other team, so that's false. That's all Ronnie talking about. But I do get it. I understand, because the best team in Mississippi, if they're won their first 15 games, the 9th best team in the state of Texas, like if let's say that's San Antonio Brennan, right? They could be, after 15 games, be 9-5 or, 9-6 or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, they could be really struggling because they played Duncanville. Then they played like Highlands. Then they went in and they played like a John Paul II, who's a tough group. You know what I'm saying? Like, so the records are going to show. But I do agree with Ronnie. Like, the best team Mississippi is going to have, or the best team in Louisiana is going to have the nod over the 9th best team in the state of Texas, because their record and their strength of schedule, is going to show.
And to follow up on that, the best team in Louisiana has to win the state title. The 9th best team in Texas is going to lose in the state quarterfinal or the regional final. So that's the difference. At the end, Chelsea, at the end of the final rankings, most likely that team's not going to win the state title. And you don't have to win the state title to be highly ranked, but, it helps when you win that final game. The #1 team is not going to lose their final game, obviously. So that rule sticks. So that's how that comes to be.
I like that. I feel like it, it keeps it a little fair, a little honest, provides more balance, to the rankings. So, okay, so let's get going. Let's take a look at our teams 31 through 50, if we can pull them up. And just kind of as we scroll through these teams, talk to me about kind of what stands out to you. I see Sierra Canyon at 32. They're always in the news because, they have Ronnie James on the roster, but just some really great teams. La Lumiere, Belmont United. Talk to me, Ronnie, about kind of what stands out to you in this first group.
Yeah, what stands out to me in this first group is these teams. Some of these teams are going to be playing each other. Some of these teams belong to strong leagues, and some of these teams are from small states like Grissom, Alabama's the #1 team in Alabama. Bartlett's the #1 team in Tennessee Activities Association, and OE Idaho. That shout out to them. We've never had a team from Idaho finishing the ranking. So they got a lot of work to do, and kudos to them. When you look, obviously, you see Sierra Canyon and Notre Dame. They're from the same league, the Mission League in Southern California. And, I think when you look at those teams, when you look at the talent they have, they play each other during the regular season and probably in the league tournament, and then again in the Southern section open playoffs, and maybe even the regional playoffs. So those teams could potentially play 3 or 4 times. And they're going to have to win. They're going to have to show consistency. Teams in this range have to show consistency. Obviously, we see some teams that, they're the #1 team in their state. But I think the team, or I would take the team on my hot seat, is number 39, Kenwood Academy. I think St. Rita and Chicago, Whitney Young are right on their right there with them. They've lost some talent. So our guy Dai Ames has to, really play well as the point guard there, left-handed player for Kenwood. They're on my hot seat because there's other good teams in Illinois and Chicago publicly specifically that they could beat them. They got to win those games, and they're going to have a big game with Simeon on December 15th. So our guy Dida is going to have to play good in their supporting cast as well.
Nice. I like that, Ronnie. Ani, talk to me about your team that's on the hot seat.
Beaumont United, back-to-back state champions in the 5A. Now they're going 6A, and they don't have their two-time state championship MVP in Terrence Arsenault. That's now at U of H. Still keep their core with Wesley Yates. They still got size and athleticism, but at the end of the day, I think Terrence Arsenault kind of gave them that bite at the end of the day that that allowed them to push through when they played Dallas Kimball, and they won both times, and in the finals the first year, and then the semifinals the second year from a comeback victory. It'll just be interesting to see how they are in the 6A, getting bumped up a level, how they're going to perform and do. But I think they'll be in the hot seat, and I think they'll potentially take some early losses.
Okay, I could definitely see that. So you talked to me about teams on the hot seat, Ronnie, but what about your team on the rise? Give me the flip side. What team do you see maybe moving up in our ranks?
Yeah, I like Carmel Christian. Carmel Christian's defending champ in their division in North Carolina. The Independents are separated from the Publics. Very good talent there with Carmel Christian. Jaden Mustaf, 224, is a top 35 player. They have Bryce Cash. They also have some good size with Caleb Seiler, 6'9", and Michael Marcus, 6'9", junior. I think they can move up there. They have a good test with Oak Hill Academy, on November 18th. So we're going to see where they're at pretty quick. And they're a very good team. So I like Carmel Christian. They have good competition among the North Carolina private independent school. So they're going to be, very good and a team to watch. I really like Jaden Mustaf, Gerard Mustaf's son, and they have a chance to be really good. And there's a lot of good competition in North Carolina.
Nice. Okay, I want to circle back a little bit. We talked about Sierra Canyon and Notre Dame, two Cali schools that get a lot of love. I want to hear your thoughts on Ronnie James. I mean, he's always in the media. There's so many expectations of this kid, Ronnie. Obviously following in his dad's footsteps, trying to make it to the NBA. But I find him notable this year because he's a senior. He's going to play a big role in Sierra Canyon this season. And I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on his ability to lead the team.
Yeah. So when you look at Sierra Canyon 32 now, I say, well, that's still really good. But, it's not where they've been starting recently. They've been ranked preseason FAB 50 now for 7 straight years. They've won a few state titles. Obviously, this is Bronny Sr. Bronny's played with a lot of really, really good players in the last 4 years. Amari Bailey, who's now already seems like he's doing well at UCLA just last year, and guys like BJ Boston and Zaire Williams, guys that are in the NBA. He's had multiple NBA teammates, but this year's team doesn't have that. Doesn't seem like they have it. Again, nothing against the guys on this team. They're a fine high school team, and they have a chance to be really good. But they got good teams in their league, and they got to win. So he's got to show consistency. Like they're at the border league, and he had a 31-point game against Bishop Gorman to open, and then he had like a 4 or 6-point game, and people were like, "Oh man, that game they were kind of nationally streamed and nationally televised, and people are looking at him to do good." And he's a senior, and he's real strong. I like his defensive ability. I like his he plays a win, plays hard, but he's got to lead this team and show consistency. Right. Like I said, I think, Ani, the key to the team will be Isaiah Ehalim and his production, actually, and then just him staying on the court and staying healthy. They got guys like Ashton Hardaway, comes over from Duncanville. He's a great outside shooter. Dylan Matoyer is a veteran. And they got some newcomers, Jimmy Oladugan and Noah Williams. But really, Bronny's consistency is going to be one of the keys.
Okay, I like to hear that. Ani, I want you to talk to me a little bit about Notre Dame out of California. They are stacked in the backcourt with Caleb Foster and Dusty Stromer. What do you think that they're going to be able to do this season, and if they have a chance to kind of move up in our ranks?
I think Notre Dame definitely does. When you got 2 high major backcourt players, it's a guard's game at the end of the day. And Caleb Foster, who's like a strong built guard, can really get to the basket and finish. Like we're seeing his highlights here, really can create for himself. And he does a good job creating for others as well. And then when you look at a kid like Dusty Stromer now that's athletic, can shoot, he allows Caleb to really get to the basket because it leaves it open, because you got to stay on Dusty. You see what I'm saying? And then
I think Ani's his speed might be there, but Caleb is really good. The thing is, Chelsea, they're in the same league as they're in the same league as Notre Dame's in the same league as Sierra Canyon and Harvard Westlake. We don't know where Harvard Westlake is yet in the rankings, but the reason I had Notre Dame behind Sierra Canyon, Notre Dame's personnel may be just as good or even better, but Sierra Canyon's been there, has done and won a state championship before, and has a little more playoff experience, a little bit better playoff resume so far. Notre Dame was in the Southern Section Open playoffs last year with Sierra Canyon, but they went 0-3 in their pool play. They went 0-3. So to go in the Southern Section Open, they're going to have prove it a little bit more and get over that hump and win, they're going to have to win that league to move up. I know Ani likes their personnel and whatnot, but they're going to have to win that league in order to move up. And that's why they started below Sierra Canyon, is the playoff success that Sierra Canyon has had with that group. So, again, Notre Dame has plenty of opportunity. They have a really strong schedule. They play Modesto Christian on, right away at the NorCal Tip-Off Classic on November 26th. They even played DeMatha, a long time, national power in Hinesville, Maryland. And they even played Duncanville 2 nights after they play DeMatha on December 10th. So they're going to play DeMatha, that week earlier. So Notre Dame's not like they lack of opportunity. They have a really strong schedule. Like I said, those 3 games are going to be really good for them. They have the personnel, as Ani mentioned. Now it's just a point of doing it and proving it.
Right.
I look forward to seeing what's happening there. Talk to me a little bit about another dynamic player in Darren Ames. He plays for Kenwood Academy out of Illinois. Great prospect. How do you see his ability to lead this team this season?
Yeah, like I said, they're my team on the hot seat, so he's going to have to do good. The lefty plays for the Mac River Fire out of Kenwood. Kenwood has a strong team. They've had some defections, but they don't worry about that. Coach Mike Irvin, he's not worried about who is gone or whatnot. He's worried about who's there. And, he's going to Kansas State. They got Chris Riddle, who comes over from Arizona. He's back in Chicago, 6'5", and they got Jaden Smith, who's a good long-term prospect, and Calvin Robbins. We even seen some 2 young players that we really going to be keeping an eye on down the line. They were at the Pangos Midwest camp. Alex Alston, 6'9", 225, and Noah Mister, 5'10", 226 guard there for Kenwood. So Kenwood, at where they at 39. Again, they play Joliet West on December 3rd, and then they got that big matchup with Simeon. They're going to have to come out of those 2 wins, head to the Holiday Tournament on a positive note. Obviously, they want to win both of those games. Joliet West gets a transfer over from La Lemire, one of the best guards in the country. So, that Dida has his work cut out for him, but he's a tough customer, and we'll see what Kenwood does here in December.
Nice. I look forward to that. All right. So, Ani, now that you're back with us, give me your player to watch from this segment. Who are you looking forward to seeing the most?
Definitely Trey Johnson from Richton Lake Highlands. He's a player that unanimous number 1 in the country in 224. Lake Highlands is their first time being in, the FAB 50 rankings. And I just think that we're in a situation where that he can really score the ball. He can play make. He can, he got other teammates around that are really good, like a Samson Alaton, like Quentin Perkins, like Jalen Washington, Trey Johnson, who's number 1 in the country in 224. He's definitely my player to watch. And I'm excited to see Lake Highlands as they go against Duncanville and they play against somebody in Cardinal Hayes, who we I think we'll definitely see in our rankings, but definitely Trey Johnson, definitely player to watch it.
Nice. Well, speaking of your player to watch, Ani, we had a chance to sit down and talk with the nation's best player a little bit earlier. So let's go to our first special guest interview.
We'd like to welcome our first guest to the preseason FAB 50 show, 2024, Trey Johnson, the number 1 player in the 247 sports rankings out of Lake Highlands in Texas. Trey, appreciate you jumping on. Welcome to the show.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
It's good, Trey.
What's up?
I know you stay in the gym. I know.
Yeah. Did you just get a workout in right now? What's your schedule like? What's the preseason schedule? What are you guys doing?
We finished practice like around 4:20, and then since 4:20, the girls had already started official practice, so I had to go into the small gym, and I just worked out from 4:20 till now.
Gotcha. What's the number one thing you're kind of working on, focusing on getting better as the season rapidly approaches?
Just playing better off of 2 feet, because I know certain teams might try to speed me up and then take charges. So I just got to stay in control and play off of 2 feet. And then just becoming a better team defensive player.
Got you. You know, Trey, this is only the first year. How excited are you that this is the first year, you know, Richardson Lake Highlands is going to be in the preseason FAB 50? Just talk about, you know, how you feel about that.
Well, I'm really excited. We just want to come out and show that we belong there and just ready to play.
Yeah. You know, your coming out party of sorts, obviously you've always been talked about as one of the top players in your class in the state, but I feel like a real coming out party was when you played against Richardson last year. Your team did, and Coach Calipari was there. You know, they're watched Kaysen, and you put on a show. I don't know how many points you had. I think you had close to 40. May have had 40. Talk about that game, your mindset going in that game, and just the reception and the exposure you got after that performance.
My mindset going into that game, it wasn't even really about scoring. It was just about trying to get the win, trying to like just stop those two players in general. Not stop, but slow them down, not let them go off, and just try to get the win. Me scoring points, it was just I just shot what was there. I didn't just go out saying I was going to try to attack them or whatever. I just took what was given.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Trey, you know, like I said, 247 named you the #1 prospect in 224. You're going into your, you know, rising junior. When did you start believing or feeling like you were the #1 player in the country? When, forget what other people say. When did you feel like that?
I kind of felt like that when I was going into my 8th grade summer, me finna get ready to become a freshman. That's when I probably like felt it. That's when I felt like it was on the rise. I was like, I knew I was #1 then, but then I just kept putting in the work, showing. And then I knew after I played my first year in the UIBL circuit playing 16s, I knew I should have been #1 then.
247 Sports named you the #1 prospect in 224. And, you know, you're excited for this challenge of going up against other top players in that 224 class and maintaining that ranking. So talk a little bit about how excited you are for playing like an Ian Jackson at Cardinal Hayes and maintaining that ranking.
It's going to be in a fun game, a fun environment of game. I'm absolutely ready for it. Just want to go out and get the W for sure and then just show what I can do, maybe.
Yeah. Sure. On your team, you know, you got like Jalen Washington, Samson Alaton, you know, that's the big fella that committed to Yale, who's like the anchor of your defense. Talk about other players, you know, talk about those guys, talk about the guys that deserve some recognition. I know when people say Richardson Lake Highlands, they say you, right? And deservingly so, but you have other pieces around you that make y'all successful. So just talk about your teammates.
Yeah, we got Samson. He done improved like every year. He done gotten better at something, or huge improvements, huge leaps. And then we got Jalen Washington. He's a good point guard, good defensive point guard, good offensive. He's the main one, control the whole offense. And then we got Quentin Perkins. He probably led us in shot blocking as a point guard.
Wow.
Last year, he led us or he was either second. He led us in shot blocking last year. And then he's also a good defensive and good player overall. And we got Warren Hamilton. He's also a good shooter that's going to help us out this year, spread the court. But we got a lot of guys that know how to play that role to the T.
Yeah, and I know even like, you know, probably stung a little bit that when BJ Davis-Ray left to go to Lincoln, but it seems like even watching y'all in the fall leagues that like, you know, it's still going. Even when you didn't play, you had to sit out for a little bit, like, you know, to rest up and deal with injuries. Like your team was still playing well. So just talk about this preseason. Like y'all kind of been gelling and clicking. Like, you know, there's nothing that, you know, like you didn't lose, you know, a 5-star, you know, player in this class.
Yeah, it's just we've been able to adapt just like real quick, because it was certain things like in practice we were messing up on certain things. When we got in the game, we were just able to click and connect off of it. So it's just like we're a good team that's able to adapt off of anything, to be honest. And we just had to, we know when he left, we had to figure something else out, another way to win. We weren't just going to give up because we lost another good player.
Got you. On November 19th, the circuit, I believe y'all are going to potentially match up against Duncanville. You know, I know y'all played them at TABC, and that was a fun one. Y'all ended up with the win, but, you know, this one really counts as far as, you know, in the regular season, the record. Just talk about when you go up against Duncanville, what's the one biggest thing that you guys are going to have to do in order to secure that win?
We're going to have to we're gonna have to play team defense. It's not gonna be able to just be a one-on-one defensive. We're gonna have to play team defense, and all five of us box out and get a rebound. That's the main thing we're gonna have to do. If we can do that, we're gonna for sure be able to play and get the win. That's just the main thing. Just play team defense and get they get one shot and done. We're gonna be perfectly fine.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know you guys have a lot of confidence, Trey. Individually, you do too, and as a team. And being in the Fab 50 is one thing. You know, staying in it is another challenge. You guys have a good schedule this year. You're going down to City of Palms. And the team that wins 6A is really going to be ranked high at the end, whatever team that is. So what's the number one thing you guys have to do as a team if you're going to win it all and stay focused, whether, you know, how many games we win or lose, to win those 6 or 7 games at the end?
Just staying healthy and staying, like, keeping our body up under us is going to be the main thing to make it down that stretch. It don't matter how many games you win during the regular season. It's going to be whose body's still fresh, who can still go out and play 100% when it gets down to those games. And then deeper you get in the playoffs, the less fouls are going to be called. So who really lifted during the preseason, during the seasons, who can take those bumps and hits throughout the season. So that's pretty much the main thing.
Yeah.
You know, Trey, it's funny when you talked about that first year in the EYBL playing 16s and you realizing you're number one in the country. You know, you made me look smart. Remember when I talked to you, the Houston Icebreaker, and I was like,
yeah.
Make sure you make me look good. Like, make me look good. To live, I was like, yo, he's the best player in his class in the state, and you know, you really done that. But you know, just talk about, like, you know, last question, like your confidence that you have, but you have like a calmness about you. Like, you go in, you're gonna do what you do, but like, talk about that confidence that it seemed like you always had, even when you were in middle school, and how that's propelled you to where you're at right now.
I just learned at a young age that if I put in the work, I don't cheat reps. I don't do anything wrong. Just follow the blueprint and do everything step by step. Get my working in the gym. It's nothing I shouldn't be confident about. I should know I'm going to hit this shot. I know I'm going to make this move. I should know I'm going to be able to do this, do that. So it really don't matter. As long as you do the work, you should have confidence in anything you do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Trey. You know, you guys, if you have confidence in your game and you guys have a good season, which one of your teammates deserves some shine? Like, if you guys start winning these games, who's been overlooked, you think? Who should colleges really be looking at when they come watch Lake Highlands, obviously besides yourself?
I think it's really Jalen Washington and Quentin Perkins, because Jalen, he gonna step up into this role to where he gonna bring up what some of BJ's slack. He gonna be able to put 10 to 15 points easily, and then Quentin go other team guard without a problem. So, and then he can also score the ball too. So if them two get to clicking on offense and defense, it's gonna be hard to really beat us, for real.
Makes sense. Well, Trey, we appreciate your time. I know you have a lot of confidence. Good luck in the Duncanville game. Good luck in the Cardinal Hayes game. Good luck at City of Palms, and good luck on the run to state.
Absolutely. Yes,
appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Wow. Well, I really enjoyed listening to Trey. I liked what he talked about, just the poise of his game and just having confidence, knowing that if he puts in the work, that he's going to kind of see the results. But I wanted to ask you guys, with that being said, this question is for both of you guys, so feel free to, chime in. But do you think Trey will be able to maintain his top rank? And do you think his team has a realistic chance of, maybe moving up our rankings in our preseason FAB 50 as the season goes on, with some of these notable matchups, hopefully Duncanville, these games that he has to play? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think he has a chance to stay number one in this class. I mean, when you look at a kid like him that's 6'5", 6'6", and can score the basketball like he can with his athleticism, I mean, those type of guys can stay on top of his class. As far as them moving up in the rankings, I think that'll be a little bit tough. They're going to have some early tests in November. So we'll see against Duncanville and Cardinal Hayes. But, as far as Trey being number one, I see that all the way through. As far as Lake Highlands moving up, that's going to be tough. I think I can see him take two losses quick, and then maybe we don't see him in the rankings, or they're closer to 50 than they are, way more closer to 50 than they are 30. Yeah.
And for me to answer your question, Chelsea, I love our guy, Ian Jackson from Cardinal Hayes, and Trey. It's going to be a great matchup. But I'll be remiss if I don't mention my guy, Flores Budunga from Kokomo, Indiana. He might be the number one player in the country in that class. We can talk about that all day. The big man, he's just dominant. Again, and they're a good team. Again, Kokomo, We'll see if they're in the rankings or they're not. You know, Cathedral, Indiana, Ben Davis, those are 3 good teams. But if Flores has a great season or if they win the state title, I mean, he's right there. And you know, he's knocking on that door with Trey and our guy and you know, to be the #1 player. But, you know, again, that's why we talk about production and success. That helps. That always helps. So if Trey goes 2-0 in those games, wow, Highlands is really going to be doing good. If they go 1-1, that's even going to be, you know, help them maintain that ranking at 34. Obviously, they want to move them from 34 as a team. But, you know, if they go 2-0, they're going to be on the move. But, and again, if they go 2-0, then he, like, to Ani's point, he probably solidifies his spot in his personal individual rankings. And everybody has a different take on that. But I wanted to give a shout out to my guy, Flores, because he's just so dominant. So.
Nice. Well, you know, it looks like Trey has his work cut out for him, but just from listening to him, it seems like he's up for the challenge. So I'm going to be excited to see what happens with him, and good luck to his team throughout the season. I want to move on to our next segment, but kind of before I do, I wanted to shout out our live viewers. I appreciate you guys, you know, tuning in, obviously, with us and sparing me on my voice, giving me a break. But just so you know, if you guys have any questions, we may not be able to touch on every single team as we go through, but if you have a team that you'd like to hear Ani and Ronnie kind of just give a hot take about, feel free to write it in the comments. I will definitely relay it to them, and those guys could, you know, maybe answer any questions that you may have. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our second segment, which is teams 16 through 30. But before we pull them up, I kind of want you to give Ronnie, the viewers, the same thing that you did with our first segment. How did we get to this segment? What's the difference? Do these teams in 16 through 30 have a real chance to maybe move up the rankings and kind of finish significantly higher than how we have them placed as we speak?
Sure. You always want to go into the season confident. And I think teams 16 through 30, they think they can win the national championship. You know, they feel that they can be in the running to finish #1. If you just look at the teams, and I'm not naming the teams, but you look at them. Team number 15. And then you go to team 16, 4 starters back, 6 lettermen. Team number 17, 4 starters back. Team number 18, 5 starters back. Team number 19, 3 starters back. Team number 20, 5 starters back. So those teams already have some success. They have quality players, and they have a lot of lettermen back. And usually teams 31 through 50, maybe, like you said, from a smaller state or less power, and they don't have as depth bench. I think teams 16 to 30 have a little bit more versatility and a little bit more size, and are going to play in big events. Teams sometimes 31 through 50 don't have that opportunity. So it's very important for those teams in the 16 to 30 range to win their big games, but they can take a loss because they're probably going to play another ranked team, multiple ranked teams, and then have the opportunity to move up. Usually if the team has a strong resume and the team has some good victories under their notch, if they take a loss, they're not going to drop all the way out. So which is a lot different than 31 through 50.
Okay, so Ani, give me the real, you know, recap on team 16 through 30. I saw you kind of smirk when Ronnie said, "Oh, these guys have a chance." I feel like you think they don't. So I want to hear your perspective. Go ahead.
No, they have a chance at #1. I don't know. Ronnie's just talking now. I know he wants to love to them. They ain't got a chance to be #1. I mean, they're great teams, fantastic teams, but they're not going to be #1. We may see one in the top 10, but they're not going to sniff #1.
Yeah,
I hear you, Ronnie. So basically, what you're saying is there's levels to it, and Ronnie, okay.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, I'll give you guys an example of what Ani's saying, and it'll be a little different. Michael Porter Jr. from the Denver Nuggets, Nathan Hale. I put him 39 to start. I'll just go on record. It was too low. How do I know it's too low? 5 minutes after the rankings came out, Porter's like, too low. He just treats us too low, And it's just like, hey, he's right. They won a big matchup. They beat Marvin Bagley and Sierra Canyon, and they ascended up the rankings. So it can happen. It doesn't happen often, to Ani's point, especially at a public school like that. But it goes back to what we talk about, the points of how you get ranked is having a great player. When you have an elite game-changing player like Michael Porter at the high school level, you have a chance. And the 16 to 30 does have some of those players, definitely probably more than 31 through 50, but it's also a combination of winning the big game, winning the right game, and moving up.
I feel you. Okay, well, let's pull up team 16 through 30 and see what we have here. I want you guys to talk to me about notables. I mean, I can say what stands out to me, being very biased, being a Las Vegas native. I see Bishop Gorman coming in at number 16. Junie Mobley's headlining them, recent Ohio State commit. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do, just them being a hometown team. Definitely see some teams that, have a little bit of tradition to them in Christ the King, out of New York. What are you saying, Ani, when it comes to this first look of team 16 through 30?
Well, when you look at Cardinal Hayes on there with we talk about Ian Jackson a lot, and they're in the same conference where you got Christ the King, you got Long Island Lutheran. It's going to be a tough battle, right? And but I feel that out of those three teams, they have the best player in Ian, and then we can't be remiss to not talk about Elijah Moore, 224, that can really shoot the basketball in the backcourt with Ian. So looking at Cardinal Hayes, I know in the comments they love to hear our thoughts. They're a team that, they're going to be in a tough league, but they have a chance to, potentially move up because I think they have, arguably the best player in the country in that class.
Nice. Yeah. To chime in on Cardinal Hayes, they played Duncanville on the 8th, and then they played Perry, Arizona Perry, on the 9th. So they're going to have back-to-back games. That's, after the Lake Highlands game. So Cardinal Hayes plays in the same Catholic conference in New York, the Catholic League in New York, is Christ the King, number 17. Obviously, Christ the King has a great crop of players, and I just give them the nod. Obviously, people know Keon Anthony on that team, obviously, but he's just a role player and even a reserve player on that team. He's not really the star of that team at all. The people that follow the ball in New York, they got Brandon Williams, who's going to UCLA. They got Quinn Fang Pang. That's probably one of the best names of the year, Quinn Fang Pang, 6'9". Dwayne Pierce, a really good player. Brandon Gardner, 6'8", 223, going to St. John's. So, you look at that roster, and then you see Kean's highlights. He's gonna obviously help that team, and people know about him. But I gave the nod to Christ the King. I just think I have a little bit more. Cardinal Hayes graduated the Catholic School Player of the Year, so Ian's has got his work cut out for them. And Cardinal Hayes has a lot of size, a lot of bodies, and a lot more depth. Our guy Joe Arbitello, who supports the Fab 50 all the time, he really likes this team, and they have a chance to be really good. They got a tough schedule. They're going to open their season at Hoop Hall International in London. They got Paul III of Virginia. We'll see where Paul III lands. Right away, the Royals got them. And the winner of that game will take on Modern Day Pace Academy from Georgia in London. And then they go to Sierra Canyon, our number 32 team, on December 12th. It's like a one-off game, Cardinal Hayes. And obviously people are going to talk about that. Why? Because it's Bronny's son versus Carmelo's son. So people are going to be tuning in. But that's a game, even though it's in Southern California, Christ the King can't lose that game if they're going to rise from where they're at. We talk about the hype, and I know Chelsea, people like to watch those games, but and people are, of course, going to talk about Melo and his, matchup with LeBron 20 years ago when Oak Hill played St. V's. But Christ the King has to put the distractions aside, put the road trip aside, and win that game.
No, absolutely. I think you're definitely right there. Talk to me a little bit, though, about Cameron Bruiser. He's coming in at number 18 with Columbus. He's a name that we see in the media very often. Obviously, he has a twin brother. They're having a lot of success. Cameron obviously headlines the brothers, but his younger brothers, or not younger brother, but twin brother is also a formidable player as well. So just talk to me what you think about the Boozer brothers and what they're going to be able to do with Columbus this season.
Yeah, Columbus, if you asked me probably a month ago, I think people thought, man, this team's going to be top 10, they're going to, national champion team that could potentially go that far because they have a player who some feel is the best player regardless of class. In Cameron, he's only a 225, but then, when you went to the border league, they didn't start off too hot. Our team Arizona Compass got him after them really defensively. So they're going to have to show that the ball handling's there, the timely outside shootings, they won that game 78-55, AZ Compass Prep. So, there's some work cut out for Columbus there. They do play the schedule. They're going to play Duncanville on the 25th that Ani will be out at the Hoop Fest. And Columbus also plays Wheeler, who's a great team from Georgia. We'll see where they're ranked. And they play them on the December 10th. So, you know, Columbus is also at the City of Palms. So they're going to have the opportunity, Chelsea. It's just a matter of them, their role players doing what they have to do. They do have experience. They do have all 5 starters back, but they have to show that they can play at that championship level that Ani was talking about. I think that's where Ani's point is, the top 15 teams, really great defensively. They got a deep bench, usually those teams, and they really get after it. Columbus just has to, again, they're young. We put a lot of pressure on these young guys. Sometimes we've talked about that in other pods with young guys like Imani Bates. We don't want to put, you know, the Bulls are so high that they got nowhere to go up. I'd rather we start them a little lower than we probably would have forecasted a month ago, but I'm fine with them at 18. I think that's fine to have a chance to move up, and they're not at this, oh God, they're gonna, you know, they're the primetime national contenders. So, you know, I think they're a really good team, but I think the Border League showed a little bit, hey, let's cut back on the hype. Let's let them do it a little bit.
Definitely, definitely. Well, Ani, since we have the list back up, but talk to me a little bit about your team on the rise. What team do you see kind of improving in the ranks here?
Vashon, I mean, I really like them out of Missouri. You know, they got some really quality 2025 pieces that really highlighted by Nicholas Randall. And, you know, they're just always well coached. They're going to come out at Thanksgiving Hoop Fest and play. But I just feel like Vashon they have a good mix of veteran leadership, but also the young talent, like high major young talent. So, you know, they're going to be the best team in Missouri. I think they're going to play against some nationally ranked teams, and I think they have a chance to move up. Some, obviously, like I said before, they're not going to be number 1 in the country, but I think they're a team that could potentially be on the rise and just continue to win just due to good coaching and a good mix of young and older talent.
Nice. I like that. Ronnie, what about you? Give me your team on the rise.
Yeah, well, when I jump into our team on the rise, I'm going to put Ani on the hot seat a little bit.
Ooh.
You talked about Vashon, but they're going down to play Kimball and Carter at the Hoop Fest, Ani. So again, that's in about, you know, less than a month from now. Vashon plays Kimball and Carter. Shout out to our guy, you know, Glenn Smith, who just put some great matchups for the Hoop Fest together. Are they going to come out of there 2-0? Are they going to come out of there 1-1?
2-0. 2-0, Ron. They're going to come out 2-0. Now, I'm very close with Kimball, and I'm very close with Carter. So, you know, Nick Smith and Lyndon Love going to give me hell, but
yeah,
you know, I don't see them beating Vashon here. But I think they'll give them a good fight, but they ain't going to win.
Yeah, and that's why we have Vashon 20. So shout out to Coach Irons. He's a big supporter of the Fab 50. But to answer your original question, Chelsea, my team on the rise in this segment is John Marshall out of Virginia. Public school kingpin there in the VHSL. They have a great player in Dennis Parker, 3 all-state players and some depth. We talk about how that depth is important. And Dennis Parker, you know, he's a really good player. I believe he's going to NC State commit, if I'm not mistaken. They also have Red Thompson, a point guard, a veteran point guard, Steve Stinson Jr., 6'5", 223 player. And Latrell Allman is a big name to remember for the 226 class. I think they really need Latrell to step up, Ani, like you said, in those games against Kimball and Carter. We'll see what the freshman is going to do. I think that's going to be a kid you're going to evaluate real closely. Yeah. And, you know, I like John Marshall there. They play in the Chick-fil-A Classic. They're going to play. Wheeler's going to be there, that we mentioned, from Georgia, and Columbus is going to be there. So Chick-fil-A is always a good event down in South Carolina. So John Marshall, they got to win in state. I believe they got to win there against the other public school teams in Virginia, but I like them as a team to rise just because of their players and because of, you know, their returning talent level, Chelsea.
Okay, I can see that. Well, let's touch on the other team from VA. We have Oak Hill coming in at number 30. Ani, you told me that was a team that was a little questionable for you this season. You thought they could maybe be on the hot seat. So give me your thoughts on them.
Yeah, I mean, Oak Hill, who's in the NIBC, and they got a young crop, a lot of 24s, got some 25s, you know, and a new coach. You know, that transition is going to be a lot, but they're going to be thrown in the fire early. They're not going to be a team that I say be highly ranked in the NIBC. They're going to take some convincing tough losses early, but they're going to be young. I think the next year is where you see Oak Hill do really good, but this year I think they're really going to struggle. They're going to fall down before we see them come up.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see what happens with them. And Ronnie, what about you? I know you don't like to show, the Vegas teams too much love,
sure.
But I want to hear your thoughts on Bishop Gorman. I hear they may be your hot seat team.
Yeah, Bishop Gorman is my hot seat team. They do have pretty much their team back. 4 starters, 6 lettermen. They have a good schedule. But with Bishop Gorman, a lot is going to depend on Jace Richardson's health. He didn't really play in the fall. He's coming off injury. And Bishop Gorman, they didn't look too hot in their game against Sierra Canyon at the Border League. And that's okay. That doesn't mean everything. They lost 82-66, but we talk about where Sierra Canyon's ranks 32. So we know Bishop Gorman, last year they beat Liberty 3 times and lost to them in the state title game. Well, in one of those games at Tark, they were down 19 points, Chelsea. I just don't think against a good team this year, they have a chance to go down 19 points and beat those teams. They don't have as much offensive firepower, or they're going to have to develop some of that firepower, which they can. But like you mentioned, Julian Mobley's probably as good a shooter as you can find in the country. Chris Newuli's 225. He's really coming on. But again, that offense, Keenan Bay, him, Ryder Esaldes, they're not consistent. Even we talked about with Sierra Canyon, with Brian, you got to find consistent offense. And I think because they have good top-line players, they have more returning than Liberty. Liberty has a great point guard, Don Thomas. He might be the best player of the crop. But, Gorman's been there. They do have their players back, but a lot's going to depend on what Chase Richardson does. He dictates a lot because the teams can kind of shade or focus on Junie Mobley and even Eli Bradley if Richardson's not on the court, which he hasn't been in a regulation game in a while. So to go from there, Gorman's going to have to do good. They're going to play the schedule to do that. They'll obviously host the Tar Classic, but they're also playing Corona Centennial on December 10th, and they another team that they got some games that are upcoming, and they're going to play Wheeler in the Hoop Hall, meaning Gorman, and they play Camden, New Jersey at the Hoop Hall. So it's not like Gorman's not going to have the opportunity, Chelsea. I know that you want to see them do well, but
yes, I do.
They got some work to do to stay here or to go up from this spot. They're definitely on the hot seat for me.
Okay, I can see that. I want to circle back really quick because we have a live viewer that kind of wants to hear a couple more thoughts on Cardinal Hayes. Ani, you touched on them a little bit, previously as we kind of introduced them, but I want you to talk about their star player in Ian Jackson. What are you expecting from him this season, and how do you think he's going to lead Cardinal Hayes to up our rankings?
Well, I think, with Ian, you're going to see his assist numbers go up. As a playmaker, as a scorer, he averaged 4 assists a game last season. But I think those assist numbers are going to go up because teams are going to pay so much attention to him. Just going to have to rely on his other guys to score. I talked about Elijah Moore. He got Steven Solano, I believe that's in that program 224. Big man, that he's going to have to man the front lines. And if he plays to his upside, Ian got some pieces around him to be successful. I think this year you're really going to see the playmaking. We know what he is as a scorer, but I think you're really going to see the playmaking take off for him and see him potentially average anywhere from 6 to 7 assists this season.
That's incredible. Ronnie, do you have anything to add about Ian Jackson and what you think his contribution is going to be?
Yeah, I just think, like you said, he's got to step up. He knows that. When you lose front court guys like Toby Awaka, who was the MVP in the CHSAA, and Tariq Foster, that it probably dropped them a little bit. That's probably the reason why they're behind Christ the King. Again, they split games last year with Archbishop Stepanak, 4 games, and then they beat him in the game that counted for the Catholic League title. But, if Ian's as good as advertised, he's going to have a chance to lead this team. And it's going to be neck and neck. Those two teams, they play right away. It's not like they're not going to play. We're going to see that first matchup. Let me see the date here between those two teams. I believe it's the 15th, if I'm not mistaken. But they're going to play right away, and they got to show what they can do. They actually play them on the 18th. So New York fans, mark your calendars. December 18th, whereas Hayes plays. Christ the King. So again, for Christ the King, they're going to be coming off that Sierra Canyon game, and they got to be ready. because, you know, Ian and his crew is going to be ready. So it's going to be great games to look forward to. There's a lot of good games in December. Again, shout out to the events that put on these big games, but also some teams that Chelsea, they jump right into conference play. That first big conference game is right away. We talked about that a little bit with number 29. Number 39, Kenwood and playing Simeon, who, you know, that's a game in conference or in the publicly right away in Chicago. So those games are big. Sometimes they're a little bit later, but for those 4 teams we're talking about, they're right away in December.
Well, from what I'm gathering from you, this segment, basically, there's not a lot of room for error if you want to, you know, have the potential to move up. And your team doing well. I want to go back a little bit to Oak Hill because, I mean, you know, Oak Hill is a staple of the Fab 50 for the last several years. They've been mentioned quite a bit. They've had a lot of success previously. They come in at number 30 in our poll. And Ani mentioned this a little bit, that they're going through a little bit of a transitioning period now that Steve Smith is retired. They have a new coach. So earlier we had the chance to talk about the transition with our next special guest on the Preseason FAB 50 show.
We welcome in to the Fab 50 preseason show, Coach Yerrick Stoneman of Oak Hill Academy, new coach, first year with the legendary program. Coach, thank you for joining us. How's it going?
It's going well, man. Thanks for having me. And it's been a long time. We've known each other for about 25 years, so it's glad to get back on this side of the basketball world so we can communicate a little bit.
Sure. I appreciate it, Coach. Why? I know you're excited to be back with the program where you started up. So talk a little bit about that. How excited are you to be back at the program that you were part of that had so much success?
I think the biggest thing is the family decision for us to come back. You know, I'm from the area. My wife is from the area. Both of my twin daughters actually moved back, and they're teaching at a local school. So, you know, like I tell everybody, I can't do no wrong. I got all the women in my life happy. So, but, you know, the basketball part makes sense, too, for me as a progression coming from a public school in South Carolina. You know, I was fortunate enough to win 4 state championships in 6 years there. And, but, you know, a year ago, this past June, Coach Smith had already called me and put it into works. And, you know, he told me he wanted me to be the next head coach at Oak Hill. So, you know, he's a father figure, a mentor, and somebody I really look up to. And when he asked me to do it, it was, I mean, I have to do it. But also it made sense family-wise and basketball as well.
Makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Now, Coach Smith started out in the Fab 50. Again, this is the preseason show. He started out number 1 9 times, and they finished number 1 7 times. So you know what it takes to get to that pinnacle. But when you left, did you realize how special it was coaching all those great teams and on the great players, or did you know it then while you were doing it?
I think I was a little bit younger, and, you know, I never looked at it and never was able to see the whole picture until you do leave, and you see how hard it is to you know, accomplish the things that he was able to accomplish. You know, I was just riding his coattail, especially those 5 national championships that I was with him.
Sure.
But you know, now to be able to do it on my own is extremely hard. I don't know how he did it and was so successful as the way it was for so long.
Sure.
Yeah, Coach, I know the things that you learned under Coach Smith helped you while you're at Ridgeview. Now being back at Oak Hill and taking that head role, what are some things that you're going to keep the same? And what are some things you're going to put your own spin on?
Well, I think the main thing that I have to keep the same is the family environment that he instilled here. You know, we're a private school in a rural area. You know, my wife has to be just involved in the program. Coach Dion, my assistant, his wife, Coach B-Rock, his wife, and, you know, Mike Lee is our dorm parent. His wife is also there. So, you know, definitely making it a family experience. I'm living on campus. You know, I could have lived off campus, but I chose to stay on campus so the kids can come over. You know, if they wanted a home-cooked meal instead of what's in the cafeteria, they can come over to the house. You know, those things I have to keep the same. You know, and some other ones is the ability of how Coach Smith was able to coach multiple high-level talent players, you know, and it starts with the relationship building. And so, you know, those are the things that I'm taking from what he had done for those 11 years that I was here.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Now let's kind of switch gears a little bit and let's talk the NIBC, right? Now they've done the expansion, added some teams. What's your thoughts on just the NIBC? I know this is going to be your first year as the head doing it, but like, what's your thoughts on it? What's the number one thing that your team is going to have to do in order to be competitive throughout?
I think, my main thought is, it's made it a lot more difficult. And Coach Smith even, when we had our talks before, he kept on telling me how much difficult it's going to be, in which,
Sure.
You got 12 games every year that, probably in your poll, I don't know if it's out yet, but your poll, you have four of our teams in the top 5 or 6. So, for us, that is 5 games that we got to play against those guys. And, so it's a lot tougher, but I think it could be good for basketball, for high school basketball. But I think, because where I have been in the public school setting, there needs to be 2 type of divisions, and, in a national championship, so to speak, polls and all that, there should be, in my opinion, 2 different ones, because at Oak Hill now we do have to recruit. Our school is based, we're a private school, boarding school. Our school makeup, even if it wasn't a basketball players, to recruit and get students here on campus. So, that's our makeup. I know in the past, Coach Smith really didn't have to do that, one, because he had the name. And it's just something that he chose not to do. But in order for me to be successful, I have to be out on the recruiting trail, just like a college coach. And I have to be able to sell Oak Hill, but also, making sure that the kid understands if they come here, if it's not a better situation, they don't need to come. But if I can make it a better situation for our kids, then it might be a good idea. And same thing for me, if my athletes here, next year I've got 10 kids that can return off a 14-man roster. If one of them sees that another school is a better opportunity for them and their development, I have to understand that and take it and make sure that everything that they do, it is best for the kid.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a different world. You're being realistic about it, and that's a good approach. Now, taking it back a bit, you mentioned before again, and we have private conversations. You felt like the '93 Oak Hill team is the best high school team of all time, and what a great team looks like. But in your opinion, are today's best NIBC teams, like you mentioned, those top 4, are they better than the top Oak Hill teams of the 1990s and 2000s? Or, how do you feel about that, like as the games progressed over the years?
That 93 team, I saw it as a college student.
Sure.
I went to Virginia Tech. I actually went to Vegas when they played out in Vegas. I think it was Felipe Lopez. I'm throwing out some old names, but Felipe Lopez at Rice. I went and saw them play in that tournament. And then, of course, I'm from the area, so I got to see them play several times. That might be one of the best high school teams I've ever seen. Now, I'm not saying that Coach Smith was not going to say that. He coached them all. But, I think for me, the best 5 that I've ever seen is Rajon Rondo, Josh Smith, that year with them.
04, yeah.
Every game we won by double digits except for one. And I think we were 40-0, something like that.
Yeah.
And we played exhibition games in Spain and beat all of their club teams over there. So that's probably one of for me, the teams that I coach, that one would probably be right up there with one of the better teams.
Correct. And how do those teams compare to the teams that you're going to face, and like you said, that you are of to date? Is there a comparison, or is it we'll wait and see, or do you know, like, hey, those teams are at a high standard and these teams have a lot to live up to?
I think the biggest thing is that, those teams only had probably 7 or 8 high major and maybe 3 or 4 NBA guys. But, if you look at some of the rosters, there's a couple of teams that have already 7 to 8 5-star guys on their roster. So that's the biggest difference. But you can only play 5 at a time. And that's where I think that, overall talent from top to bottom, the Mount Verge, the IMGs, and AZ Compass Prep,
sure,
they got a lot more talent from top to bottom. But that 6 or 7, I think, it'd be hard to beat with the Josh Smiths and Stackhouse teams.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You can only play 5, but these teams, because of the conference, they're recruiting more. They have deeper teams. Is what I get out of it. Yeah, that makes sense. In the last couple of years, Steve Smith's last few years, Oak Hill started at number 6 last year and number 9 in 2021. Now your team may be starting a little lower, and this team has some work to do, improve. But how excited are you for the kids to get the opportunity to get better, and why will they surprise people this year?
Well, I think our expectations have not changed. It doesn't matter if we're ranked 17 or not ranked at all. Coach Smith set a standard here, and my job is to uphold that standard. Is that every year we're expected to win a national championship.
Sure.
So it doesn't matter where we're at, but since I've been in a public school, I see things differently. The success of this team is not going to be dictated, in my opinion, at the end of the season. I'm looking at long term. In 7 to 10 years, are there good people within the community?
Sure.
Are they the right husband? Are they the right father? Or are they doing the right things? Or are they able to hold a job? So that's what I'm more concerned about here, is that I continue to do that. But basketball wise, I give us an opportunity to compete against everybody every night. And, whether it's the teams that are ranked ahead of us, we're going to compete. And that's the best thing about the team that I've got. We've got 14 new guys that came in, and there's not been a practice that we're not competing. And that's our biggest thing. Talent wise, other teams might have more, but I don't know if they compete at a high level as what we're going to compete at.
Gotcha.
Makes sense. Talk about your junior class. I mean, you got some really good talent with Zion Pimpkins, with AJ Swinton, Michael Robinson, Dante Russo-Nance. Just talk about how their development's been coming along.
Oh man, it's definitely going to make my life a lot easier. Next summer when we're trying to bring other guys in, because I don't have to bring in as many kids. But they are high level kids. Academically, off the court and on the court. So, and the biggest thing is, I think, as a new coach in any new situation, whether you're starting out as first year head coach or you've been head coach and you go to a new program, that first year it is the key, or that first practice or that first individual workout. That's the key, because you set your standards, and it's great to be able to have all of them to come back, and the standard is already set. You don't have to reteach it. They're teaching the other guys that come in. But, talent-wise, Zion Pipkin is as good as a guard as I've had in a long time. To me, I think he's very, very similar to Cliff Hawkins that we had here. He's just not left-handed. Cliff was left-handed, went to Kentucky and was very successful. On-ball defender, he gets after it. He's about 6'1". He's surprisingly athletic, more than what you think vertically. And Michael Robinson is really one of those type players that can fit anywhere. 6'5", 6'5 and a half. If I need him at the 2-3 spot, he can play that. If I'm gonna play him at the 4 or 5, our offensive sets is going to be more wide open, because we're not as big as a lot of the other schools. So we have to take advantage of our speed, our quickness, and our ability to create from the perimeter. Sure. So he's that one guy. And I think one thing that some people got him top 50 to top 100, but I think he can be a much higher player, just for the fact that I'm coaching him. And when you coach somebody, you understand what they bring to the table. He doesn't have to score 20 points a game to get recognized. He's going to be that 12 and 7 guy, but every loose ball, that 50-50 ball, he's going to get. Every time a shot goes up, he's going to be getting in position to try to rebound. And those are things that you can't teach. I think a lot of times on rankings, people see the flashiness, people score 30 points, this and that. He's not necessarily going to do that. But if he's given opportunities, he's going to make buckets. AJ Swinton is very similar to that. He's that Swiss Army knife too. He can fit multiple roles, and he can create different mismatches. High IQ guy that, defensively is going to be in the right position. Some things that will work, just denying weak side flashes, things like that he's, we need him to be better at, that we're continuing to work. One, Dante Russo-Nance, a lot of people don't know about him because he came from New Zealand. He played in the NBL, and he averaged like 16, and that's against grown men. In the high school league, I think he averaged like 30. So, he's one of those guys. He's not super quick, super strong with the ball. He dictates the pace. He's not going to get sped up. Too many times, like those quick guards, they get sped up and the game goes too fast for him. The game's never going to be too fast for him. I don't care who's guarding him at the talent level that he's going against. I definitely see him a top 30 kid in the country, if not better. He can really, really shoot the ball. Right now he's been out the last 3 weeks. We're just making sure that he gets healthy. His foot's a little messed up right now. So we're taking it, and hopefully within 3 to 4 weeks he'll be full go. But he's as good as he gets. And there's a couple other juniors in there, and I'll throw a sophomore out there as Caden Magwood. Just as soon as he understands not to rush and to trust the sets and this and that, I think in a sophomore class he could easily be a top 75, if not better kid. So we've got a lot of good younger talent. Jamie Vincent is another kid from the Houston area, highly skilled. He's just got to get a motor. If he gets a higher motor, who knows? He can be a high major Power 5 type kid.
Now, Coach, I will let you go here in a minute. You used to say, and talk about when the landscape was different, you guys were kind of the only show in town, just come to the hill, baby. You guys got a lot of guys because of your reputation, Coach Smith's reputation. And 15 to 20 years later, there's a bunch of schools now that have kind of taken Oak Hill's blueprint and kind of making it their own. Are you surprised by how much the landscape has changed and how much now harder it is to consistently get the players to be number one, to get to that number one spot in the rankings?
Yeah, it's because of our location, and there's a lot more schools out there that have a city atmosphere to it. I think for the kids, it's Oak Hill is not necessarily the right situation, but as a parent, and if a kid truly loves basketball and really wants to be a great player, this is where he should come. The reason why I say that, at Oak Hill, we're able to silence the noise. All other distractions are gone. You're here at Oak Hill Academy, and you're focusing on two things. You focus on your academics and your basketball. And, as a parent, that's what all parents want. And it's safe. We're in a safe environment. Sure. And it's a family environment. When we go to the cafeteria and eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner, all the faculty and staff, family, and are there, their kids are there. So this is a family environment. So when they drop their kids off, they know that it's going to be in a family environment. But, and another thing that's different from us is our gym's almost always open.
Sure.
I think if our public knew that, they can come up and get in the gym at 11, 12 o'clock at night and start hooping themselves. But, as long as it's not our study hall hours, and as long as they let the dorm parent know, which is our assistant coach know, they can be in the gym probably throughout any time. We do try to limit it about a little after 11, but 6 o'clock in the morning, they can get back in it. So if someone is serious about basketball, this is it. I've got an unbelievable staff. Coach B-Rock, we all know him as B-Rock. He's been Coach Smith's assistant. He was Coach Smith's assistant for 20 years. This is 21st year. Sure. Dion Dacons played here for 2 years. He came, his father was his high school coach. He transferred here his junior, senior year. He played with Carmelo Anthony his junior year. From there, he went to Temple. He was our MVP his senior year at Oak Hill. He went to Temple, and, his senior year at Temple, he's MVP for the team. Then, he was a grad assistant at Temple. He coached at the college level at UNC Asheville. and he just felt a calling to get back to his family, his Oak Hill family, and so he's been here for the last 3 years. Andrew Fleming is our skill development guy. He was a former player here. He's during the summer he trains several overseas guys. He's trained some NBA guys. Bacon was the last one, but Bacon just got cut, so he's going overseas. So he's he has a high IQ of the game, and especially skill development, and that's something else that kids want these days. And then my other coach, Dorn Parent, he's been here. This is 4th or 5th year, so the expectations are the same. We're here to try to win a national championship every year. Try to, if you break it down even smaller, we're trying to win every single game, every single matchup that we have, and every single practice that we have.
Makes sense, Coach. Well, yeah, from where you're going to start, like you said, and probably in the middle of the pack, you're going to try to build up from there. And if you win every game, you will move up. That's especially with the schedules you're playing. So we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining the preseason Fab 50 show, and good luck the rest of the year.
Thank you all. Appreciate you having me, and look forward to seeing you on the road.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Wow. Coach Stoneman provided a lot of great insight about the direction of Oak Hill and what they're going to be doing this upcoming season. I liked a lot of things that he touched on. Some things that kind of stood out to me was just about how he's trying to help his boys, go from boys to men, that there's just kind of a maturity aspect there. That at Oak Hill, because it doesn't have that city feel to it, that they're just really keeping the main thing. Like, the only thing there is to do out there in Oak Hill is, kind of play basketball. I don't know if Ani would be able to make it if he was one of the players, but it seems like it works for some of those kids. One thing that he did mention, though, earlier in the interview, so I hope our people were kind of sticking with us. Coach mentioned that he felt that the polls should be separated from independent schools and state association schools. And I want to touch on that a little bit because I don't agree, actually. Just kind of being a professional basketball player myself, there's a lot of disparity in basketball, unfortunately. It's kind of just the way that it works. I mean, we look at the NBA, Ani, there's small market teams, there's large market teams. I'm over here overseas, and in every league, you see teams that have a lot of money and teams that have a little bit of money. So there's always going to be some type of disparity. And even though we're not talking money with high school teams, we're just seeing teams that have the ability to recruit and teams that don't. So I don't personally feel like there should be separation of polls. But Ronnie, I wanted to ask you, why is the Fab 50 one poll, and are there any plans to maybe break it up in the future?
Sure. Touch on that, why it's one poll. And it's, shout out to my mentors, Doug Huff and Mark Tense, when they started this in 87, 88. It was 25 teams. And then we went to the Fab 50 format, the one we currently have in 1999-2000 season when Dominguez won the championship with Tyson Chandler. And it's always been in a one poll, regardless of its independence, regardless of its, parochial, which is a lot of times part of a state association, or the public schools, which is obviously in a state association. And the reason is because, the teams play each other mainly. They have not, now each state has different rules. Some states can't play an independent team like an Oak Hill, like the CIF in California can't, but in Ohio, those teams can. Like the teams in Ohio are playing SoCal Academy. They did last year at the Flying Hoop. That's not allowed in California. So the state associations don't have uniform rules. Then, if they did come to uniform rules and they said all members, full-time members can't play independents, then they would never be able to play each other. And if they never able to play each other, then I would have to break it up. But so that's one reason, is because of the way the states are formed, the way their rules are. Some are more stringent, some are more lenient. That's just nothing I control. I have no interest in them. They can do their job. I'm not getting paid to interpret the rules. I just interpret the rules. I'm not getting paid to basically, set their rules. They set their rules as they want. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is the barometer. We talked about the barometer. The teams want to know how they stack up against IMG, Montverde, Oak Hill over the years. So they play in this event, and they play at these events. If they beat them, they're very memorable. Chelsea, I remember I talked about that on the pod. maybe a few moons ago, about the Great Cheyenne team in 2-3-0-4. That was their only loss. They were in that game right to the end against Oak Hill. It was here in Vegas with the Josh Smith, Rajon Rondo team, and they barely lost. Well, why do I remember that? Because they played that big game. They won all the rest of their games. They're one of the better non-Gorman teams ever in Vegas. And I think they finished 14 or 13. It might could have been a little higher. I probably should have put them a little higher looking back at it. But that's why, because they play in these events and people want to play them. I think, Ani, we talked about that before. People want to measure themselves. The great players want to measure themselves against the great players. It's the same thing with the teams. They want to measure themselves against the great teams. And sometimes they beat them. I can look back at Oak Hill. We've kind of mentioned them. They've been preseason #1 many times, 9 times. They've been the champion 7 times. Obviously, they're starting at number 30 this year. They got their work cut out for them. But I can almost remember a lot of those losses. Why? Because those are big-time games for those schools. Huge. Julian Wright, who played at Kansas, Homewood, Flossmoor, Missouri. I would never remember Homewood, Flossmoor for any reason other than they beat Oak Hill with, Kevin Durant, Ty Lawson, Jamon Gordon. Julian had a great game. They beat him. They took 2 losses that year. Oak Hill did. I believe their other loss was to Mana Alice down in Mississippi. So those games you never forget over the years. I think if you even look at LeBron James's year, the first time they were on national TV, who were they playing? Oak Hill, right? They beat them. It was a great game on ESPN2. People watched it. That's what they remember. So that goes to answer your original question, why I don't cut them off, because they still play. The barometers of success are still there. And the second thing I know Ani would likes this point is, Ani, if you're running an event, you want those teams at your event. When you count the gate money, it doesn't separate Oak Hill from the rest. At the end of the day, when the event operators run their event, and if they make a profit or loss, there's no separation between the two. So right now, Chelsea, I have no reason to separate the poll.
Ani, chime in a little bit. I know you probably kind of agree with Ronnie, but I'm just interested to hear your thoughts. As if it should be broken up. I feel like, just the equality aspect we talked about. How can you achieve true equality to make it fair for everybody in a poll? I just feel like there's no way to do it, but give me your thoughts on it.
Well, one of the few times I agree with Ronnie, especially on this show. No, they just need to get over it. They love to play against these teams, and when they win, these public school teams win, they brag about how they won, that they're better, and they should be ranked high. When you lose, then it's, they recruit or this, that, and the third. First off, everyone recruits. A lot of these coaches recruit.
Sure.
Some just get caught. but going back to your statement, they benefit off playing these teams. They benefit off winning these teams. And again, winning against these teams, and event operators benefit off these teams playing in these events. And these high schools that have these events, like, okay, for example, Lake Dallas is running an event next week to start the season. I bet you they will love if Montverde came to their event, right?
Sure.
So, and if they were to play and beat them, whatever, they would want to be nationally ranked. They said, Ronnie, we're a top 50 team in the country. So I don't really want to hear about that. Oh, we want equality on the rankings or whatever, because at the end of the day, they all have the same goal.
Yeah, and not just that. I need to follow up on that, and Chelsea, we'll move on to that, is public teams have won the national championship. Just last year, Duncanville, part of the independent school district in there in the UIL. Chino Hills won in 2016, public school. Nathan Hale, we talked about Michael Porter Jr., Seattle, public school. Yates, public school. It's a misnomer a little bit that these teams can't play. Now, can they beat them all the time? No, you're right, Chelsea. The teams in the 40s are going to have a hell of a time to try to beat AZ Compass Prep or Sunrise or Montverde, yes. But it breeds competition. It breeds healthy competition. Most of it is healthy competition. And if you beat those schools, you'll never forget. It's just like when a team beats Findlay Prep in here in Vegas, right. they don't forget. So that answers Coach Stoneman. But again, back to his point too, if the state associations, they were clamped down on that and they don't play at all, only in fall leagues or only in showcases, like out of season, then I will separate it. But I still think at the end of the day, people are going to ask me, Ronnie, what were we have ranked in the FAB 50 if we were with them? It would come back down to the same.
At the end of the day.
They would be asking, or they'd say, Ronnie, let's set up a game. Them versus our chance versus their chance to be a shirt and skins game. They'd love to play it. So we come back to the same original point.
Right.
Got you. Well, sorry, Coach. It looks like the poll is going to stand as is. But since we are talking about the polls really quick before we continue, I want to touch a little bit on eligibility. Let's talk about the teams that are eligible for our poll. We spoke earlier about Donda Academy. We know that they obviously don't qualify. So Ronnie, share kind of with our viewers just what kind of goes into being eligible to being in this preseason FAB 50.
Yeah, we do have some guidelines. They've been around a long time. They've been around a long time, longer than these pop-up schools. Be honest with you, could be completely frank. Some of them are simple. Look at the top. You got the 8-semester rule, which is standard across high school basketball. You know, you got to be within your eighth semester of high school. If you're in your 9th semester, you're technically a post-grad. You know, sometimes it's referred to as post-grad or 5th year. So we do our best to not include those teams. In fact, we don't. We have them fill out a questionnaire. We have them sign a document saying we don't have 5th-year players. It's very important for their opponents. You know, we want to keep some credibility to that. That's why schools are like Brewster Academy and the other teams in the New England Prep League, which have traditionally had postgraduates for 30, 40 years. They're not eligible, but they have great players and great teams. And shout out to Coach Jason Smith at Brewster. You know, he's a great guy, but he knows, you know, he knows he's not in the pool, and it's not a problem. It's about getting better for those teams. It's about, you know, you don't have to be in the pool. It's about some guys are great 5th-year players. An example is Donovan Mitchell. He used that 5th year to his advantage, and look at him now. He's an NBA All-Star, so he's not worried about our pool, quite frankly. But for the teams that they want to play against other high school players, and the age cutoff guidelines are not specific, meaning there's not one uniform one, Chelsea, that's mandated by the National Federation, you know, State High School Associations, NFHS. They give some guidelines, but as we mentioned in the show, every state has different rules. So those ages are pretty lenient, pretty up there. You could be 19. It's usually 19 before September 1st. For some, it's June 15th. Chelsea, that's pretty old. That's pretty old. You could be 19 and a half and be playing high school basketball. It's not a problem. So again, every state goes by slightly different. You know, August 1st could be June 15th, but the recommended date is, I believe, September 1st. You know, turn 19. You can't turn 19. You know, after that or whatnot. That's pretty late. That's getting into being 19 fully your senior year of high school. I know, Chelsea, you don't like that. So that's some basic guidelines there. Obviously recognized by a high school governing body is pretty straightforward. You know, if you're an associate member like Oak Hill's been, and, you know, we talk about those teams, and, you know, recognized by a high school governing body, you don't necessarily have to be in the state association playing for a state championship, but being recognized means a sanctioned game, meaning the teams in that particular state can play against your team in a sanctioned game that counts in the record that obviously counts toward the FAB 50.
Okay. So what does it mean for league conference membership? You talked a little bit about the governing body associate member, like league conference membership. Touch on that a little bit. Yeah.
You know, when we talk about the NIBC got formed 2 years ago, Sunrise Christian beat, you know, was in the championship game against Montverde. Montverde won the national championship with Jalen Duran and Caleb Houston, that group in 221. They didn't get a full year, Chelsea, because of the COVID year. You know, they didn't get a full slate of games. There was, you know, they were flying on the seat of their pants. They created the league. And then last year, 221, 222, they did have the full league. Sunrise Christian, led by Grady Dick, won the league, the NIBC. They did a terrific job, but they unfortunately lost at Geico. So they did win the regular season. So they're in a conference or league. They have rules and they have regulations to stay in that league. And as Ani knows, they added 2 teams this year, is Long Island Lutheran and AZ Compass Prep. I know AZ Compass Prep has been on the national scene now a few years ago. They had Ty Washington a few years ago, and now they're part of this league. So they're eligible because, again, they have some guidelines they have to follow. Some independent and prep teams have no guidelines, Chelsea, because they, in essence, don't answer to anybody. You know, to be in the FAB 50, you have to answer to somebody, whether it's a state association or be part of a league with bylaws. And those bylaws for the NIBC are on our website on .com. So go check it out when you check out the preseason rankings here. They'll be released in about 20 minutes, the actual written form. But here's the basic, you know, things that those 10 programs must adhere to. It must be a part of a state accredited institution that is recognized by the U.S. Department of Education. That's point blank. They got to be part of a school. The program must have a full-time academic institution. It can't be fly by night. It can't be in a in a parking lot somewhere where the guys are taking classes. It has to be a full-time academic student with the headmaster and or athletic director in charge. And they have to offer a full curriculum to non-basketball players. They have to have a full curriculum for other students.
Okay.
Again, the program must, we talked about that NFHS. They have a cutoff date, September 1st. And we talked about already the 8-semester rule. They fall under that as well, the NIBC teams. And the roster has to be set in stone by the first week in January. You know, we've had this incidences over the years, and we've seen it now where guys are still talking about it. Ani, we talked about the guys leaving Donda. You can't have teams leaving your school in January and February and then playing in the postseason or being part of the team and being ranked. So they have to be on the roster. And this year that falls on June 1st, Friday, January 6th. And that's the date it falls on, that first week of January. So those are the guidelines. They're pretty set in stone. They've been in, I know some people like to cry foul, but they've been in place in a long time. And I think for the NIBC teams, they have something I call, frankly, the Tristan Thompson rule. We call it the Tristan Thompson rule because Tristan Thompson left St. Benedict's to go to Findlay later in the season, and they can't have that no more. You know, Tristan Thompson went from St. Benedict's over to Findlay, and some people didn't like that. And honestly, it probably wasn't a good thing. So they cleaned that up, and they're doing a good job. And those guidelines are now set in stone. They're published or for public domain, and you can see the guidelines here for the rest of the schools as well.
Gotcha. Well, honey, talk to me a little bit just about that last point that that we had on the guidelines, just about amateurism. You know, that's a huge thing that we've been seeing lately. Just even in college with NIL deals and, you know, maintaining that, why would, you know, amateurism kind of exclude a team? Maybe like some of these teams we see highlighted in social media, like Overtime Elite or programs like that.
Well, you know, programs like Overtime Elite that are paying their players, that guys are on salary, you know, they lost their amateurism. You know, they can't go to college. I know they've gone creative and guys have signed NIL deals. They go there due to NIL deals. But guys that are in programs that are getting paid a salary in situations like that, I mean, they lose their amateurism. So why will we have them in a high school ranking? You know, it doesn't make any sense. So, you know, just touching on that, it just doesn't make any sense to have players that aren't amateur, that lost their amateurism, to be in a high school national ranking.
Sure.
No, definitely. I like how we have these guidelines to keep things as fair as possible, and just to kind of keep a focus on true high school teams, I guess you could say. But let's kind of move on to our third and final segment, teams 1 through 15. Now, this particular segment, I want to do a little bit differently. Before we kind of pull up the teams, because this is our top 15 teams, I want to kind of touch on everybody. But as we've done with the previous segments, Ronnie, I kind of want you to just touch on what makes a team top 15. Are these teams just head and shoulders superior over the competition that we've seen in these other segments? And just kind of what is everybody's chances to win a championship in this segment? Is it just open, or what do you think?
Yeah. You know, like to Ani's point, Ani thinks these teams are the separators, you know, like they're way better than 16 to 30. I have a different opinion. And they are better than 31 through 50. If one of the top 3 or 4 teams were to play a team in the 40s, they should probably be a 12, 14-point favorite, even if it's a road game. The teams in this have a pattern of success. They've probably been there before, or they just have a monster roster. And sometimes that happens, like a Chino Hills. They started number 9 that year. We talked about them winning the FAB 50 title in 2016. They had, you know, we didn't know they were going to have 3 pros, but they ended up having 3 pros, and 2 of them were freshmen, but they still went undefeated. So they have the talent level that Ani's looking for, and then the difference many times is Coach Stoneman mentioned it, is the depth on the bench, and then you have 6'9", 6'10", 6'8", many times coming off the bench, 7th, 8th, 9th man. Very hard for team 40 through 50, even 31 through 40 to have that. They traditionally don't. Now, sometimes they do. Maybe they could be young, or maybe they don't have a good point guard. Usually this team does not missing much. They have a veteran guard. They have size. They have coaching. They've been there before. They're coming off a successful season, or they just have the overwhelming talent that you can't miss, as we mentioned with some of those teams. Now, once in a while, a team will come from the, you know, a little bit lower to ascend to a top, and they can't lose late. That's another thing. You know, Chelsea is their schedule. They got to go through a gauntlet of teams. We obviously talked about the NIBC. Coach Stoneman was right on the money. We got 4 of those teams in this next group coming up. We'll see who they are. Most of the people watching can probably figure out who they are. It's just a matter of what order they're in. And they've been there before, you know. So those teams over the years, you look back, you're going to see a lot of professional players, a lot of NBA players. And that's what I like to look back sometimes and say, man, look at that team had 3 NBA players. Not too many, but I did a report on it on the .com one time about a year ago. You know, it's a little bit more than you think, Chelsea. There's almost 50 programs that had 3 or more NBA players on the same team at one time over the years. They're various. They finished various points in the rankings. Many of them are Finley, which you watched living in Vegas. Some of them are Montverde, Chino Hills, Oak Hills had. And then you get to 4, very few that have 4 NBA players on the same team. And then 5 is like 2. It just doesn't very much happen. So it's the talent level at the end of the day, playing the schedule and then winning that schedule as Duncanville did last year, or as Montverde's done in recent years, or as IMG did in 2019, or, you know, our Chino Hills did in 2016. It's actually completing that schedule. To Ani's main point is you got to win the games in front of you. It looks good on paper, but you got to win.
Absolutely.
So I think it's safe to say that, Ani, that these teams passed the eye test. But Ronnie made a point about them potentially losing late, saying that it can't happen. But I can make an argument that these teams can lose maybe earlier if they have a stacked schedule and when they're playing against the 3, 4, and 5. If I'm playing games, numerous games of top teams that are maybe ranked a little bit ahead of me or within the same pack of me, how is that going to influence my ranking? So that's my question to you, Ani.
Yeah, I mean, it'll influence it, obviously. Like when you look at a team, if you're 4th ranked and you lose to the team that's 8th, I mean, you will drop a little bit, right? Or, you know, if you're the 10th team, you lose to the 14th team, you're going to drop some. You just can't take too many of those. Like you can't be the 9th team and lose 3 games, even though they're within the top 15. You're going to be out the top 15 because it's clearly you're not at that level. You need to go to another tier. So I think you take an early loss. You know, it's against a stacked team that's ranked fairly high or equivalent to the same or in that same tier. You're going to drop, but maybe not much, or you may not drop at all because there may be 3 or 4 teams out there in that tier that lost that week. You know, we've seen it happen, especially last year. But if you're taking 2, 3 losses early like that, I mean, you need to get out. You know, it's just you need to get out. You ain't there yet. You know, yeah. I was wrong about you. That's just
you could be wrong. And obviously, that many times our number 1 team does good. Our number 1 team doesn't finish too low. And back to your point, Chelsea, about Oak Hill, where we say 30. Ani goes, man, they're going to have a tough time. Well, that's against the standards of all the other teams. Against their own standards, that's the lowest start they've ever had. Wow. They've only in 35 years, they've only been ranked 23 preseason. Twice, I think. I had them start with 23 one time under Steve Smith. So they are taking a little bit of a hit, like Ani likes to say, so they got to build up. But that's only against their own standards. Against the rest of the country, they're going to be very competitive. So, yeah, you know, those teams, as he mentioned, we want to shout out like our guy Glenn Smith down at the Thanksgiving Hoop Fest and our guy Chris Williams at the Hoopsgiving in Atlanta. The games are tighter earlier. They're big games now in November. Before we didn't have that. I'll give you an example. As many years ago, you'd have the rankings. I'd follow them when I was a kid, in whether they're USA Today and then the Doug's National Prep Poll, which became the FAB 50. You'd have Chelsea 4 or 5 teams, 29-0, 28-0 at the top, 27-0. Well, it's almost like a reputation thing how they got ranked. The great Dunbar teams and some of those other teams. You know, Crenshaw was involved in some of those. Spingard and DC, they didn't really play each other. So a lot of what happened in the past was reputation, and they got put up there. DeMatt that was in that boat a little bit. So kudos to everybody around the country. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. Is they play each other. So those teams do take losses. And now you see teams in the top 15 with 3 losses, 4 losses, 2. Well, like Zani made the point, if you mentioned 2 minutes ago, they beat each other up. So that there's more beating each other up than there was previous years. Before we would have in the late 80s and mid 80s, you know, 5 teams at 29-0. You're just picking an order. So those days are over, Chelsea.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. Okay, well, let's go ahead and take a look at the top 15 teams. As I said, we're going to do this segment a little differently. We're going to touch on every single team. And I'm going to start with you, Ronnie. with Harvard Westlake coming in at number 15. Talk to me about them and your thoughts about them being in the top 15.
Yeah, you know, Harvard Westlake, a great team. Harvard Westlake has 3 starters back, 10 returners. They got a good freshman class, including Dominic Bento, who they need in the 226 because he gives them just a little bit of size off the bench. Harvard Westlake is in the same league, the Mission League we talked about with Notre Dame, 38. We talked about Sierra Canyon, 32. They're the leader in the pack. They got the big win last year in the Southern Section Open playoffs against Sierra Canyon. Sierra Canyon did beat them came back to beat them in the playoffs. Harvard Westlake still a little step behind Centennial at 9 because Centennial beat them pretty good in the section final. So Harvard Westlake falls a little bit behind Centennial. Coach Giles and Coach Rabibo, 2 great guys. They do a good job. So Harvard Westlake, Trent Perry plays for Vegas Elite. Chelsea, you know him a little bit. He takes the reins of guard. They got Hinton in the backcourt as well. They did very well at the Border League in their division. They lost by basically 1 basket to Prolific Prep, who's an independent power with a great team. They went all the way to the final. And they, like I said, they did a good job a few weeks ago. It was 71-70 that game, and Prolific it would be, very good. So, man, they're a good team, and they have a chance to do really well. If we go to 14, pick Central, 3 starters back. They're the team to beat in Ohio. Centerville, we have at number 23. They're going to play on December 17th. Pick Central, I really like. They've done a good job with their program. And they got just a good team. And we talked about Ani talked about having a guy who's really big time. That team just has a good team. Devin Royal going to Ohio State. Gavin Heading, 6'7", 223. Juwan Turner, 5'10", 224. This is just a good team, Chelsea. Centerville came into the championship game last year 29-0 at number 11 in the Fab 50. And the Tigers used a big 4th quarter and took them apart. Won their first state crown since 2012, 55-48. So you got to like that team. Royal averages about 19 points a game, 8 rebounds. So, as the Ohio State commit, this team's going to go as they go. And I really like them at 14 pick Central. Again, because the Ohio can't travel, Chelsea, they don't have big wiggle room. But if they can stay right in that range, they might be able to finish 10, 9, 11. And that's kind of where the best Ohio team has been in recent years, in that range.
Nice. That sounds pretty good. Ani, talk to me about Cathedral coming in at number 13 from Indiana.
Well, we talk about big-time players, right? Xavier Booker, 223, one of the best players in his class. He headlines Cathedral, who should win their state championship. Ronnie talks about the power states. You got to be part of a power state, to move up. But, Cathedral, they should handle business. But they also have Jake Davis, a Mercer commit, shot 47% from 3 last season. And then they got Jaron Tibbs, who's a Purdue football commit. But like Ronnie and y'all have seen, like, big-time football athletes in the high school level, they can get a lot done with the rebounding, their size, and, and he's a kid that can kind of score inside and out. So when you look at Cathedral, they're the best team in their state, in my opinion. They're they got the star power, they got size, they got shooting. They just got a mix of everything that allows them to be successful.
Nice. So after Cathedral, we have Wheeler coming in at number 12. They feature Isaiah Collier, one of the premier prospects in the country. Talk to me a little bit about them, Ani, and what you see from his team.
Yeah, when we talk about Isaiah Collier, the best passer in his class, we get to see in these highlights here just his athleticism, him being able to go downhill and playmaking transition. He has pieces around him, and they're really good players, but I think Isaiah sets them up to be really good. When you talk about Arrington Page, who's a USC commit, athletic, forward, can kind of face up and score, play above the rim, be a lob threat. When you got new addition like Jelani Hamilton, who comes from Cumberland, who's scored 20 points at any night. That's a big piece because, when you got Collier who can get to the basket, get into the paint and finish and do a lot of things, he's going to find Jelani, and Jelani's going to be able to operate because he has other players around him. Cameron Brown, who's a good compliment for Arrington Page, you know, in the front court. We just look at Wheeler. I mean, they got some tough opponents earlier. You talk about City of Palms. I believe they're going to be the number 2 team. No, I apologize. They're not. But, you know, they're going to be in the quarterfinals. They're going to be playing against some of the high-level teams in the City of Palms. So they're a really tough group. I love Collier. He makes people around him better. And I think they're just going to be a team to really watch, you know, potentially moving up.
Yes, I'm definitely a Collier fan. But we have another elite prospect coming in at number 11 with Link Academy and Jacoby Walter. Ronnie, talk to me about Jacoby Walter and Link Academy.
Yeah, Link Academy. Last year, as you see Jacoby on the highlights, finishing on that dunk. This is a new group, Chelsea, meaning it's a new roster, and they also have a coaching change. I think Ani would say to this that if you looked at just their personnel, they might be a little higher, but they have a coaching change. You know, Coach Perry moved on to the college ranks, and new coach Bill Armstrong, who's a former associate head coach at LSU. He's going to do a good job. Jacoby, ball his life underclass and All-American. Baylor commit, 6'5", strong in the off guard. He comes from Texas. They also have Elliot Cadeau, who's well known in the 224 class, point guard, 6'1". That's going to be a hell of a backcourt. They're not going to lose too many games. And they got Tyler McKinney, 6'9", 224. Corey Chess, who's going to LSU, 6'8". So they got built-in forwards. They got Jacob Cole, Oklahoma commit. Kate Phillips, 6'9", Tennessee commit. So they got a good crop of seniors. I just want to see how they mesh a little bit. Again, 11, they're in perfect range. They'll have a chance to move up. I think if you look at their talent level, it's probably a little bit higher than that. They were really good last year. Last year, they made it all the way to the Geico Championship game. They had a really good team, Ani, as you know, and you follow that team closely. They have another good team this year. Again, coaching change maybe affect them slightly, but not really. Coach Armstrong's going to have them ready to go. You know, they're going to play in the Bass Pro. They'll get a chance to meet Sunrise there. Christ the King's there. Number 49, Bartlett's there. Bass Pro, Springfield, Missouri. 10,000 fans, always a great event. I know Link's going to want to try to win that. They might face Sunrise in the final. Maybe Christ the King gets in there. If Christ the King can beat one of those in the semifinals, that'll be a big win for Coach Albertallo's group. But again, Christ the King will already have played a lot of major games. But I know that Link's going to want to do well early and then get set up to do good at the Bass Pro. They have a lot of one-off games. They can't play Missouri teams. That's why they're eligible. They're not part of the NIBC, but they could beat some NIBC teams. So that's why I have them number 11.
Nice. I could definitely see that. And coming in at number 10, we have Hopkins Charter out of PA. So what do you think about them, Ronnie, and how do you see them moving up maybe the ranks of our Fab 50?
Yeah, Imhotep is a Panthers, very good program. Philly Public League, defending champs. Again, in Philly, they're separated by publics and privates. They're the kingpin of the public. They've done a very good job. Justin Edwards, you can't miss him. Kentucky commit. He's one of the reasons why they're ranked this higher, but they got a full team. Ramir Barno, Florida Gulf Coast commit, 6 foot. You know, he is a veteran there with, we see right here, Justin finishing at the Elite 24, and he was having a good time. And they're having a good time out there, but this team is no nonsense. Ahmad Noel, another great player, 224 guard. Everybody likes him. There's just plenty to like about this team. I really think, Ani, that Justin's a Mr. Basketball USA National Player of the Year candidate. He's a Class 5A State Player of the Year as a junior, averaged 18 points, 8 rebounds. He even made 43 three-pointers. And he's just a tough matchup. He can go inside and out. Barno's a 4-year letter winner. The Panthers can't have more than one, in-state trip of, I don't think. They have they got to replace Mo Adula going to Ryder, but I think they do have enough to move up. They have a very tough schedule. They got to play North Laurel in the Scholastic play-by-play, just in a one-off. North Laurel, that's going to be a good game at Freedom Hall on December 11th. They have a game with Simeon, number 29. They play John Marshall, 22. They face Cardinal Hayes at the Spalding Hoopball Classic. So we got Edwards versus Ian Jackson. That's all the way in January 15th. They're the number 3 seed at the City of Palms. Ani talked about a little bit about the City of Palms. Wheeler's the number 7 seed, even though they're 12th. That shows you how tough that it's going to be. I'll run off those teams real quick before we move on, Chelsea, to the next tier of teams or the next group. Paul III, is in it, number 1 seed. Corona Centennial is going to be in it, number 9. Imhotep, the 3rd seed. 10, Columbus, number 18 in our rankings. They're the 4th seed. Myers Park, who we haven't really talked about. They're the 5th seed. Our guy Donnie put him as the 5th seed. Myers Park has a lot of work to do as that 5th seed. Coming at number 26. Bashan's in the event. 6th seed, number 20 in our rankings. Wheeler, as Ani mentioned, and then rounding out that top 8 is Lake Highlands, who we had. We talked about Trey Johnson. Trey was on our show earlier. So that's going to be a great event. And, you know, does Imhotep have to win? I don't know. You know, Paul the Sixth has to win to stay at number 3. But that's going to be a gauntlet. That's always a great event. Can I have get it done? I think Imhotep will be in the semifinal against Corona Centennial.
I'm looking forward to that one. It seems like there's going to be a lot of great matchups. And that's to my point about rankings in the top 15 and how these teams can shuffle in such a competitive event. But we got at number 9, our top ranked California team in Centennial CA. Ani, talk to me about them. They feature a premier player in the country in Jared McCain. What are your thoughts on them moving up in our ranks?
Well, when you talk about Jared McCain, you know, someone that, you know, earlier on in his high school career was known as just a shooter, someone that could really knock down shots with a quick trigger. And he's really developed his game as a primary scorer, playmaker. Jared just, you know, he's gotten so much better. When I saw him at NBA Top 100 camp, when I seen him in just the EYBL, as we're seeing here, just creating separation and scoring, you know, he leads Corona Centennial. And then you got UCLA commit Devin Williams, who holds it down in the front line. Then you got Aaron McBride, who's just the glue, you know, the hard worker, just does the dirty work. And they've been successful. You talk about 3 guys that, you know, were in their last years, guys that are 3-4 years in, you know, they're a team that been together. I always talk about veteran leadership is important. You talk about BJ Taylor, who's also a big piece for them. You know, Corona Centennial, no doubt about the best team in California, and no doubt a top 10 team in the country.
Nice. I'm going to let you, Ani, touch on Duncanville too, because obviously the Texas ties, and you know, we touched on Duncanville a little bit earlier in regards to their sanctions. So we have them coming in at number 8. It's really kind of up in the air what's going to happen with them throughout the season in terms of games they're going to be able to play. But we still have them ranked. And Ani, tell me what you see from Duncanville at number 8.
Yeah, you know, obviously the Duncanville in the news lately has been the greatest, but I mean, let's talk about really the talent of the team. This is a team, like I talked about Corona Centennial, that's returning a lot of guys that have been there for years, you know. Ron Holland. I know they just added KJ Lewis, who's an Arizona commit. But you got Cameron Barnes, you got Eric Demings, you got Evan Phelps. I mean, they got players that have played with each other for a long time and been playing with each other since middle school, and a staff that's been there for a long time, for a while too. So, you know, they got the rematch with Corona Centennial. That's going to be a big one. You know, Ronnie talked about Corona, you know, man, like what would happen? What if, you know, last year, you know, the whole situation, but they got a loaded schedule. They got to play Notre Dame right after they get done playing Ian Jackson 2 days later. They got Roselle Catholic, who we have at number 5, you know, at the Bahamas Hoop Fest. So, you know, Duncanville's still loaded. Ron Holland really has to carry the offensive load, unlike he kind of had to do last year, where he could just be more of a utility hard worker. But his game's gotten better. His shooting's gotten better. KJ Lewis is going to do his thing. And one thing about Duncanville, they can really defend. And that's what's going to keep them in the game. That's what's a big reason they beat Montverde last year. Just never underestimate Duncanville, because they're arguably the best defensive team in the country.
Nice. Well, I have a quick question, kind of related, but in regards to Duncanville, we talked about their sanctions and stuff previously. Even if they are sanctioned for their actual league, does that affect these kind of premier events that are outside their like league and conference schedules? I don't know if you hit on that earlier, Ronnie, but it was something that kind of crossed my mind as they came up again.
Sure. Go ahead on, and I'll try to help you.
Yeah, like, you know, if there is a situation where potentially they're ruled ineligible for the playoffs, it still wouldn't affect the non-conference. So they can still play in the Hoop Fest and all these other non-conference fests. They just won't be able to make it to the playoffs. And that's where, you know, that's where it gets tricky there. But, you know, we'll see what the decision is there.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I'm glad we cleared that up. So let's move on then to number 7. We have Camden out of New Jersey coming in at number 7. Ronnie, what do you think about their team and their chances of possibly moving up in our ranks?
Yeah, Camden has been there before. Camden would be my team on the hot seat in this group of teams. Obviously, we know about DJ Wagner. He's a Balls Life first-team All-American last year, National Junior Player of the Year. ESPN has him as their number 1 player. Other people think, Booker's number 1. So again, he's been at the top. He can, score with the best of them. His recruitment is obviously one of the biggest stories of the year. But my team on the hot seat is not because they, don't play the schedule or nothing like that. It's because they're as talented as anybody, and they have the inside guy with Aaron Bradshaw, but they have a coaching change. Rick Brunson, Jalen Brunson's father, joined the New York Knicks. And, so when he joined the New York Knicks, taking over is 31-year-old Malik Waynes, the 2009 McDonald's All-American out of Roman Catholic. Malik is taking over the program. And at that level, they've been under the pressure cooker. So I think that'll be okay for Camden. DJ is probably going to be the first, father, son, grandfather combo to be a McDonald's All-American with his dad and his grandpa, Milt. But, so they're used to the spotlight. But, again, the story on NJ.com a little while ago, they're being questioned about their eligibility with some of the personnel on the roster. According to that NJ.com report, 5 of the 6 top scorers on the 21-22 team that won the Group 2 state title did not live in Camden. The players were enrolled in a magnet school, and they got a steep tuition discount from what normally the other students would pay. So, all that's got to be cleared up. Again, we've talked about that a little bit with Duncanville and some of the other things. Sometimes the off-court things affect these teams, but on the court, this team has a chance to really be great. Again, when we talk about that magnet school, it's supposed to cost $22,000, but the district charged the players $1,500. You hear these things and you're just like, you want to, like Duncanville, they're going to have some off the court distraction. I mean, just having DJ Wagner and, deciding in between Kentucky or Louisville, is he going to go to the old Camden connection with Louisville? Is he going to go to Kentucky? He has an NI deal with Nike. So everybody goes, oh no, he's going with Coach Cal. Just that alone is a lot of things, but this team is good. They've been there before. I'd be remiss not to talk about some of their other players like Cornelius Robinson, Albany commit, Deshaun Hankins, 6'6", 223. I already mentioned Cyan Medley, the point guard veteran, going to St. Louis. And then with Aaron Bradshaw, Ani, when you got a guy 7 foot, going to Kentucky, he's already going to Kentucky, to be clear, where DJ is still open, quote unquote open. The Panthers played the schedule. They got Centennial. Their big games are at the Hoop Hall. They got Centennial on January 14th, and they got Bishop Gorman. That's going to be a huge game for Gorman on January 16th on that MLK Monday. They play Centennial 2 days before. But Cannon's, they don't play Roselle this year. It's kind of a bummer. There's no TOC in New Jersey. So Roselle, and as of now, again, could change. As of now, Roselle and Camden are not scheduled to play, and there's no 2 more Tournament of Champions. Bummer for me, bummer for the rankings, but, those teams are going to play plenty of good teams, so they'll have a chance to prove their rankings worth it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how Camden does with the coaching change. But let's continue. We have at number 6, IMG Academy. Ani, talk to me about IMG.
IMG, they seen themselves in the top 10 on many of times, and this year is no different. When you look at the roster, we talk about versatility in the NBA. Like when we talk about the NBA in our previous shows, this is a team that's very versatile and has a lot of shooting. We talk about Bryson Tucker, 224, Amir Ali, another 224 player, Jamie Kaiser, a Maryland commit. You just got guys that can just switch, guard, rebound, push. They can go 5 out and score. The NIBC, there's no clear cut. When you look at these rosters, and Ronnie could tell you, there's nobody that's just like, oh, they're no doubt going to win, win the whole thing. So, but IMG, I think, has a legit chance. I think teams like that, they're going to be hard to guard. Connie Roos, another 224, 6'8", and kind of shows some versatility. They're just going to be a team that's going to be tough to play against, tough to game plan against, because they can throw so many different type of lineups at you just to exploit mismatches. So, when we look at IMG, I just think they're a team that has a legit shot to win at NIBC. but there's no clear-cut favorite right now.
Can you see IMG possibly finishing #1 at the end of the season? What are your thoughts on that?
I can. I really definitely can. I just think they got. I like teams that can switch, athletic, and can shoot. You know, when teams have the mixture of those three things, I think they have a chance to, you know, go really far. And this team that has a decent amount of high major players and guys that are athletic and switch and shoot, you know, I think and good coaching. Then they got to have hella coaching. So I think with all that mixed together, they have a chance of being #1.
Okay, I guess we'll see. Well, at #5, we have another New Jersey team coming in. Ronnie kind of touched on, you know, them not playing Camden this season in Roselle Catholic. We know that they featured Simeon Wilcher. So, Ronnie, talk to me a little bit about them and their chances of moving up our ranks.
Yeah, you know, Roselle. You guys can't say enough about Simeon Wilcher. He hit the big shot to beat, you know, Camden last year. Again, I think that game went into overtime. So even if just him, him and DJ are really the only guys with All-American, high school All-American acclaim coming back. Obviously, some guys reclass. He's committed to North Carolina, 6'3". You know, as you see Simeon on there, you know, look how good he is off the dribble. Probes, can pass, good players, and he's going to have good players around him. That's the key. He's got strong. Most guards can't stick with him in terms of his strength and his overall ability. And you know, when Mackenzie Mbako, I don't want to butcher his name, came over, and he's going to Duke, and he came over to the program, joined the program. That kind of took him to the next level. Rich Briscoe is a veteran on that team, a power forward. He's been around. They got Akil Watson going to Arizona State, 6'8". He's a small forward. And then if Simmons switches to the 2-guard, or, you know, he's off the ball, Christian Pierre-Louis is a really good point guard with experience. So they can go big. They can go small, Chelsea. They can do, you know, they have a lot of different type of lineups. They got 4 returning players with starting experience, 7 lettermen total. You know, in the final year of the New Jersey, you know, TOC, they won it, and they could be a lot better. They got size. They got depth. Wilcher averaged 22 points. You know, he had 22 points. He averaged 17 on the season. He had 22 points against Camden in that championship game. You know, Briscoe's a good shot blocker, even though he's undersized. Watson's a rugged floor. He gives them grit. You got to have grit and toughness to win in New Jersey. They also got, you know, again, another guard, Sebastian Robinson, 6'3", 223, comes over from Elizabeth. Chelsea, he averaged 21 points a game at his high school. Elizabeth's pretty good. He's going to come over here and probably average 9, 8, you know. But again, when you have those players, that's the type of players you need to win against the schedule they have. Ani talked about the bash the fest in the Bahamas. They're going to be down in the Bahamas. I know, Chelsea, you wish you could be there December 16th, 17th to get, you know, there's a little bit of that sun and weather. December 16th, 17th, they got Sunrise and they got Duncanville. So right away, we're going to know what Roselle is kind of, you know, quote unquote, what they're working with. You know, obviously they could bounce back a little bit, but they got to split there at least. They probably want to win 2. They got a big schedule. Again, Hoop Fest in Paradise is going to be good. The other monster regular season game for them is on January 14th. They got Paul VI, number 3 at the Spalding Hoop Ball Classic. So, I mean, you know, they face Calvary Christian. They got the schedule. They got the players. They got the experience. They pretty much have a chance to win the national championship.
Well, good luck to those boys. Let's take it back to the West Coast. We have AZ Compass Prep coming in at number 4. Ani, talk to me about AZ Compass.
Man, you know, we got a good look at them at the Border League, and they were really, really good. I talked about defense earlier with Duncanville, and this is a team that I really liked how physically they just got after it, you know, starring Mookie Cook, one of the best players in this class, Rayvon Griffith, who's a 223 that committed to Cincinnati. Looking at here, Mookie, you know, he used athleticism. People try to ask me, like, what position is he? And I'm like, he's a basketball player. Yeah. He just gets a lot done. You see him, you know, finishing lobs. I've seen him grab and go. I've seen him make open shots. I've seen him defend like 3 or 4 positions in a possession, right? Just gets a lot done. And then we also talk about, which is AZ Compass, Farrell Compton. I think he's super underrated in this class. He just does all the dirty work, rebounds. He reminds me of Kenneth Fareed type, just, you know, just going to go after every rebound and dunk on you and just talk a lot of stuff, which I love. Because when I played, I talked a lot of, you know. But, you know, when we look at this AZ Compass group, they're going to be challenged early, you know, in Pleasant Grove, Utah. They got Montverde, and then they got Sunrise back-to-back days. So we'll see how good they are, right off the bat. But I think this is a team that I think could definitely go 2-0 in those games. They're really well coached, and they just look like in the border league, they look mid-season ready.
Yeah.
And that can either mean two things. Either, they're kind of peaking too early, or, there's a lot left in the tank, be scary to see what they look like, going through the NIBC and, in Geico.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice.
I just wanted to touch up on their little Chelsea is, they won that first league. That they came off against Columbus, and that was a big game, and right away they just put the hammer on them.
Yeah.
They really did. And it's nothing against Columbus. Columbus is going to be a good team, but as you mentioned, they can really defend. True Washington comes off the bench. If True Washington's coming off your bench, you're really good. Tai's uncle, there's True there with the steal. He really sets a tone for them. He can start if he needed to. He comes off the bench. Sometimes he's sixth, sometimes he's the seventh man. And they won that game. 78-55. So again, I think that game honestly, it's going to pay off for Columbus down the stretch. Now it might have knocked them a few notches here in the preseason, but I think that's really showed them what it takes, and it showed the fans out there what it takes to really be at this top level. I know Ani talks about that top level. It's a different level, and it is. So to be at the Arizona, AZ Compass prep level, coming in number 4, Roselle 5, IMG 6, you got to really defend as a team, and this team really can. And they've been there before. They've been right on the cusp. Montverde's beat them 4 times in close games. Montverde came back. They were down. AZ Compass had a lead in that championship game. It was 63-56, but that was overtime. Cooper Flagg made some great plays, and the game went into overtime. But, AZ Compass was right there, and they're right there in the rankings.
Wow. Well, that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. We talked about Paul VI previously, that team having some really good upcoming matchups. We have them coming in at number 3. Ronnie, what are you seeing from them in our rankings?
Yeah, Paul III finished 16 last year. The top team in the WCAC. I know the WCAC coaches, shout out to them. They're always paying attention to the rankings. Some of my friends, they really respond. I really like to give them a shout out to all of them, really. Bishop O'Connell, St. John's. Obviously, we got St. John's at 33. We got Gonzaga. We got DeMatha. That's, besides the NIAC, that's the, premier league in the country. They've been good for 40, 50 years. All those teams are established, old. And Paul VI is the leader in the pack right now. They've been a mainstay in the past decade. They returned 4 starters, 8 lettermen. They won the program's first WCAC tournament crown. Again, that's different than the league crown. Last year, they won the tournament crown, their first one since 2013. It begins with Deshaun Smith, Harris Smith. He's going to Maryland. He's a top 40 player in the country. If he has a big season, I think he can move up. And they also got Darren Harrison in the 224 class, and he just committed to Duke, Ani. Our coach Shire's really getting it done. He's gotten some great recruiting classes, and Darren's a really good player. Isaiah Ibrahim, 6'6", 224. And they got size. Patrick Dogongba, he's 6'10". He's a top 100 player in that 224 class. Abraham's a transfer from Highlands in Warrenton. He's a big guard, so they can go big and small. He can slide down to the forward. He's not going to reach his averages that he had at the last school, but it's not going to matter. Coach Farello and Coach Williams do a great job. Similar to Roselle, they got deep bench. They got mismatches. There's plenty to like. I would say this about the WCAC. They've had many teams ranked in the last 10 years. 9 times out of the last 10 years, they've had 3 teams ranked. This year I only ranked 2 because I think DeMatha and Gonzaga are so close. They're going to play. One of them's going to play in. I'm giving the St. John's the nod right now at 33, but those teams have a chance to easily move up. Chesapeake's very hard to win on the road in that league. If Paul VI, they could lose a game and go back up to number 3. But again, you got to win on the road, and they can't lose much more than one WCAC. And now again, if they lose to Sunrise or Montverde, it happens. Whatever that may be. You talked about their tough schedule, or maybe those 2 teams lose and they gradually get up to number 2 or number 1. And it's really hard to get at number 1. I will say that, meaning they don't drop like 40 drops. If number 1 loses, they don't drop like the team in 40 or even team 15 drops. because we know they have a tough schedule. So, I really like that Paul the 6 team. Chelsea, you talked about their schedule. Doug McDaniel does move on to Michigan, so the point guard's got to really be shored up. But Coach Riley doesn't think it's an issue. He thinks Deshaun and Ben Hammond played significant minutes at the point last year, and he's very confident in them leading. They got depth. They got Jordan Smith at 226. They got Jordan Hunter at 226. They got Anthony Brown at 226. Those guys may not play much, but they're going to push the veterans in practice, so they're going to be ready. Obviously, their schedule is ready, set. They're going to go to London. We talked about that. They got Christ the King. So they got 2 great teams. Number 3 versus 17. Paul the 6 cannot lose that game. I know Coach Arvatello at Christ the King is going to be circling that game on his calendar. Obviously, they got to be worried about the travel. Going to London is, it's the next day and the next morning, but whatever team's, is going to deserve that when it ever comes out. And Paul the 6, to kind of maintain that momentum, they can't lose that game.
A lot of pressure on Paul the 6 based on your breakdown. So good luck to those boys. We have at number 2, we're down to the final 2 teams. Sunrise Christian Academy coming in. And Ani, I want you to give me some feedback on them and what you see in their upcoming season.
Well, when we talk about Sunrise, they were the team prior to losing in Geico. We're the number 1 team and won the NIBC. They come back this year. You got some veterans like Layden Blocker, Arkansas commit. You got Scotty Middleton, Ohio State commit. Then you got guys like Myro Little, I believe. That's, I want to make sure I'm saying his name right. He's a Baylor commit. Then you got guys like John Bull, 224, who runs like a gazelle. Rice loaded. Luke Barnwell does a hell of a job with his players. I think a player that I think is going to really come up this year, Michael Brown. I got to really see him in the summer, 225 point guard. I think, Chels and Ronnie, I think you've seen him a little bit. I think you're going to really like him. He's a dynamic playmaker. He can score it, shoot with range. Reminds me a little bit. I'm not saying he's him, but I saw a little bit of Trey Young at the same time. But just looking at Sunrise, loaded, veteran leadership, obviously NIBC, they got a chance to no doubt have a chance to be number 1. I just think they have a lot of, they got the veteran leadership. They got some young talent coming up. I think John Bull could be an X factor, especially, just seeing how much he improves, especially on the offense end, but he's really going to make a presence in the interior defensively. But, I'm interested to see, with Grady Dick gone, and we saw an uptick with his production and just his exposure, with his play last year. I want to see between Layden and Scotty, who makes that jump, and Ronnie, you can answer this. That I think is going to be the key to, do they stay number 1? I mean, do they go number 1 and really make that leap like that they couldn't really do last year? Or, do they kind of stay just within that top 10, 15 range?
Yeah, I'll chime in there, Ani. It's a great point. I'll tell you why I had Sunrise number 2. It's to your point. The 2021 team was a hell of a team. When you talk about the Tennessee point guard they have, who went to, Kennedy Chandler, and Kendall Brown, those are NBA players. So when this Sunrise team lost those 2 guys in 222, like you said, Ani, Grady Dick steps right in and they're rolling. And so that kind of gave them the credence of why they went over Paul the 6 and Arizona AZ Compass in these rankings, is because they've been able to sustain and take those big time losses. We're not talking just about a college player moving on. We're talking about future NBA players moving on. And they still were the regular season NIBC champs. So to your point, they have Layden Blocker and they have Scotty Middleton. So they can go big or small. They can bring in your guy from 225 and play, small, go fast, or they can go big with Bull and move Scotty Middleton more to like a 3-4. And then if they have to rebound and go big, they'll go big. And so I think it's the sustained personnel losses, been able to rebound real quickly is the difference of why I have him number 2. So it's just a matter of getting over that hump. I think the main difference for Coach Barnwell team this year is they kind of looked at the schedule. Ani, they finished too fast last year. So it was a 6-week gap between their last game and Geico, the start of Geico, which is the NCAA Final Four weekend. So they didn't play good, and that happens. Coach Smith at Oak Hill over the years talked about it. He's like, man, sometimes we just don't play good at Geico. The break screws us up. that's where you got to give kudos to Coach Boyle and Montverde. They've been able to get through that. They have an over 800 winning percentage at Geico. For whatever reason, they have a big break because they're part of the NFHSA rules. They can only play 25 regular season games. They've been able to overcome that break. Well, Sunrise, AZ Compass, and others have to prove that they can. And, Montverde's been able to do that. So for Sunrise, they're finishing a little bit later. The last NIBC stop is in early March. So I think Coach Barnwell likes that. So when Geico comes, it's not as big layoff. Chelsea, I want to ask you a question. Being a professional basketball player, playing at a high level in college, a week you can get out of shape. What do you think about that and how that separates the top teams from like the pretenders who can't get to number 1 and 2 is, how do you play that big a break?
I mean, I think it's definitely hard to have so much time off just to honestly keep the focus. I mean, anybody, and I speaking for myself just as a player, like you look forward to the games. So to know that you have to come practice every single day for, so many weeks before you finally get to that point, I think sometimes it's just hard to keep the motivation and, the intensity high when there's such a big gap. So kudos, to Montverde for being able to do that. I mean, just being in Israel now, we have a small national team break of like 2.5 weeks. And I dread that time because even though I'm practicing and I'm still playing hard, like it's not the same as the intensity in a game. It's not the same as, that type of tempo getting up and down. So just the difficulty in finding your rhythm again after, having so much time off. Like maybe I'm rolling my last game going into the break and now I don't play again for 3 weeks. Like you have to only hope that you can, maintain everything. So I definitely see the difficulty in there. And it's kudos to Montverde for being able to be successful and overcoming that, year after year.
Yeah. So, obviously with that, by process of elimination, Chelsea, you didn't have to even say it. They're our number 1 team.
Number 1.
Right away they play AZ Compass. I know AZ Compass is circling that on the calendar, November 22nd, about 3.5 weeks from now. They got IMG on their first match with IMG on December 1st. Not a huge surprise. They won the Geico last year. They've been there before. They've won the national championship 6 times. They won Geico the same amount of times. They're not always number 1 when they won Geico, but they've won 6 championships. Coach Boyle's been there, done that since he's taken over the program for the 2011-2012. They won the title in 2013 through 15. Ben Simmons led those teams, and they've been led by different guys. RJ Barrett in 2018, the great group in 2020. To Ani's point, this group has something to prove to be against those groups, against their own standards, but against the pack of teams. We've talked about it many times on the In the Paint show. This 223 class has a lot to prove as a class, meaning the top 100 players. A lot of them we mentioned, but there's no Zion Williams, Ben Simmons type players right now. Now they could emerge. Maybe DJ's that player. Maybe Xavier Booker's that player. Maybe Simon Wilcher's that player. Maybe he's going to have a great season. But, Montverde has some young players. The only starter back they have is Kwame Evans, KJ Evans going to Oregon. Cooper Flagg is a difference maker, 225. He's right there with Boozer as a top player in 225. And you see him there. He kind of reminds me of Bobby Jones, the old 76er. And a little bit of Billy Cunningham, who's a great player in North Carolina, and was a great NBA player. Look at them going over the top. He has the size. He played really good at the border. He was the difference. He jumps into the passing lanes. He did that against AZ Compass Prep. He had a big-time rebound finish, put back, pull-up jumper. He has a complete game. I mean, he plays good on defense. They have a lot of bodies with him. They got a good bench. They got a great point guard. Who played really good. He was my MVP at the event. Chris Johnson going to Kansas. Asa Newell comes off the bench. Sean Stewart going to Duke. He had some good moments. Marvell Allen didn't even play in the event, and they still won the event. Marvell Allen, obviously a guest on the In the Paint show previously. Marvell played at Calvary Christian. He comes over to this team. There's Chris Johnson on the highlights. I mean, Chris Johnson really played good. He really stepped in. He really showed what he can lead this team. He even got into a little banner with the AZ Compass bench and coaches. He's a big-time game player, and he did it down the stretch. They were down. They came back to win that game. And, how would I have ranked it if AZ Compass would have won? Maybe if AZ Compass would have won by 2 or 4. would have had Montverde probably number one, maybe Sunrise. But, they weren't at full strength. Obviously, they were missing Marvell. But, I wouldn't have dropped down, them too far. And Montverde in the semifinal beat Corona Centennial 74-61 at the Border League. Again, if Centennial would have won that game, would I have put them to number one? Just a little bit higher, I think. I still could think it would have been between Paul, Sunrise, or Montverde. And the other semifinal, again, we talked about Sierra Canyon being consistent. They looked great against Bishop Gorman. Then they go in the semifinal, and everybody's like, yeah, let's tune in against AZ Compass, 73-48. Arizona, AZ Compass blew them out of the water. Ronnie had 4 or 6 points. That goes to Ani's point. The defensive intensity at the top level is like college level. And I think Montverde's players prove that, and they've shown over the years, not just in that game, they've shown over the years they can step up to that level. They have the experience. The coaching staff have the experience. They do have young players on. It's very interesting that they're going to be led by, in essence, a Kansas commit, some good guards, and Cooper Flaggs, who's a 225. I think Cooper Flaggs showed a lot in that Border League event and how good he could be.
I got you. So basically, Mount Verde is the clear-cut number one. There's, no doubt in your mind that they are the number one team. And Ronnie, you made mention that, maybe they could take a loss or two and not drop too far. So just last thoughts on Mount Verde as the number one. Can they lose a game? Can they lose maybe 2 games, depending on who it is too? How far do you see them dropping in the rankings? And, basically, can they lose?
Yeah. I'll tell you, they could definitely lose. They got, there's Sean Stewart there. Again, they have so much talent. They can lose. They have to be in the SC game. They can't really lose to a team like, they mentioned, they kind of joked the coach staff, hey, we played Duncanville. We were playing Duncanville for the whole NIBC. So, in other words, that matchup was key. And when they lost at the buzzer on the Eric Demings 3, that kind of gave Duncanville the boost over all the NIBC teams because, again, whoever wins Geico might be an NIBC team, maybe Link Academy at number 11. If Montverde has a sustained success at Geico, they've proven they have, they're going to be one of the teams that could win it. And if they do win it, even if they take losses, Chelsea, they'll be able to jump back up. Will they go to 2? Will they go to 3? Will they be back to number 1? Again, depends what Roselle does, depends what Cam does, depends what Centennial does. Again, if Centennial beats Duncanville and Centennial runs the tables in California, they could get up close to that number 1 spot. Again, that's not going to be easy. They got to get through Harvard Westlake. In the southern section playoffs, in the southern regional, they got to get to Modesto Christian, who we haven't talked about, who's the NorCal defending open champs. Modesto Christian comes in at 27. They got a lot of proof. They got all their players back, led by Jamari Phillips and BJ Davis going to San Diego State. Again, you got to get through those teams. So, Montverde's kind of like up there in the pole position, mainly because they have the talent level and they have the experience, but they can take a loss. It can't be too late. Usually it obviously can't be at Geico, and they're not going to finish number 1. And whoever team loses at Geico's can't finish number 1. The Geico team could be number 1, but it's not a guarantee. Just like it wasn't when Chino Hills won and finished number 1, or last year when Duncanville won on court and finished number 1.
Gotcha. Go ahead.
I want to talk about that. Montverde, like you asked, like, can they lose? Will they lose a game or two? Like I talked previously, the NIBC, there's no clear cut. I mean, Montverde is number 1 now, but there's no team that just like I feel like is going to go undefeated in that league. Yeah. So they're going to lose a game or two. I don't know when, but they'll lose a game just because there's just no clear cut, just favorite in that league. But they're number 1 so far. They're the most talented team in the country. They're the team that's clicked the most. When we look at just as far as talent plus, just gelling together. So, I think they'll lose a game.
Yeah. I think Ani mentioned that they'll lose a game. So that goes to your point. Yeah, they might lose a game, Chelsea. But it takes a lot to be number 1. It takes a lot to stay number 1. It takes a lot to get to number 1, really. There hasn't been that many number 1 teams other than some of the, Oak Hill, Montverde, mainly that we mentioned. So they can lose and come back.
Absolutely. Well, it's going to be super competitive. We have a lot of great matchups throughout the season, so it's going to be very interesting, like you said, to see if Mount Verde can keep the top spot. But that wraps up our rankings, and I just wanted to let our live viewers know that they can find the complete list of rankings on ballislife.com. There's a Fab 50 tab at the top of the page. You can click on that for all of the rankings, as well as detailed write-ups of each team. I know I spoke earlier that we may not touch on everybody, but we do have a detailed write-up for each team, talking about key players, rankings, and basically the breakdown of their schedule on ballislife.com. So just click on that tab at the top of the page if you've missed out on any of the information. As you can see, it's right there in front of you. Very easy to navigate and just kind of to be able to follow the team's progress throughout the season and see what you have looking forward to from each team coming up. With that being said, we appreciate you guys, kind of tuning in and hanging in with us. I know we've been going for quite a while, but I promise you we're almost done. We're just trying to give you the best content that we possibly can. So just like I said, appreciate you hanging with us today. It's one thing to obviously be #1 ranked, but it's another thing to finish #1. So our next special guest, our final special guest, is a player that played for a team that won the Fab 50 title in 2011. After staying focused following a big #1 versus #2 playoff win. This guy talks about what it takes to become a #1 team and what it means to be a Fab 50 champion.
Here on the Preseason FAB 50 show with a special guest, Kyle Anderson of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Kyle, we appreciate you coming on. How's everything going?
Everything going well, man. No complaints. Appreciate y'all for having me. Thank you.
For sure.
No doubt, Kyle. Obviously, you're about 10 years out of high school. We're talking about high school ball and preseason rankings. You're on your 3rd NBA team. You're obviously with Minnesota now. So tell us how much you appreciate doing this for a living and trying to get to that goal, is to win an NBA title now that you're basically 10 years out of high school.
Oh, yeah, it's been a dream, man. I know I worked really hard to get here. Sure. Sleepless nights, long days, a lot of hours put in the gym, practicing my craft leading up to the years in the NBA, and then actually staying here and continuing to put the work in and staying true to myself. Means a lot being that I'm in my 9th year in the NBA and I feel I got a lot left in the tank. So just really living out my dream is really special to me.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm glad you feel that way. You're taking care of your body. You got a lot left in the tank. Mm-hmm. That's very important. Knowing just how hard it is to win in the league, does it make you appreciate your high school national title more and the TLC titles? What's your first thought when you think of those days? Is it a little bit more important now that, hey, man, it's really hard to win in that league?
Yeah, it's super hard to win in this league. There's only a few good teams in this league. I think for a majority of my career, I've been on a lot of really good teams. You get 6 to 8 real good teams in the league each year. I think I've been on, those top 8 teams, maybe 4 or 5 times in my career. So I just understand, what it takes to be on a winning team and the sacrifice. And, we're all NBA players with families. You want to produce numbers. You want to be a big part of each team. But sometimes being on winning teams, it won't be your night at times. And, you got to do other things. You got to sacrifice. Got to give up a lot to win. So that's important. But as far as, the high school standpoint, I think it was, high school was just, I don't want to sound arrogant or anything, but it just was super easy. Those kids, you're playing against kids. It's just it's a different level. So high school came off super easy. My teams, we had crazy summers putting the work in, so it just really came easy to us. It's a lot harder in the NBA. Sure. So when you say easy, like, you had to work, like, I want to get to a higher level. Mm-hmm. So like, when you say that, you just knew you could, like, you guys were going to dominate certain teams. So does that, like, now that you've done it, does that keep you kind of closer to the fellas over the years, whether it's like, Jerome Frink, Miles Mack, like, you guys kind of talk about that or not? Guys are adults, people have families. Kind of what's the deal there? Yeah, 100%. I see my guys all the time. I keep in touch with them. I'm very close with them still. It's still the same love and energy whenever I get to link up with them. But what we always talk about is the summers that we had, like those summers going into the last 2 years of my high school career and getting ready for those 2 seasons where we went undefeated. Like, those summers were brutal. Like, Coach Hurley would have us, running for hours, all types of strength and conditioning, stuff that I do as a pro now to this day. So, Coach Hurley really got me prepared for the NBA. He had us, doing crazy workouts, crazy conditioning on top of basketball. So that, our summers were just different from every other team. So, like, every fourth quarter in high school, you could see us not even close to being tired, and you would see other teams starting to dwindle or not have the same energy in the fourth, and we would always turn it up a notch. So that's why I think we were so great and we won so many games that, you know, we were just in crazy shape. We put in work that no other high school team was doing.
Makes sense.
Kyle, you know, it's crazy. Like, you know, St. Anne's won 4 Fab 50 titles, and then that was closed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's even crazier, you know, considering that Patterson Catholic closed,
mm-hmm.
You know, heading to your junior year. Just talk about that, you know.
Yeah, it sucks, man. It's like, you know, I don't really have a high school to go home to or you know, get my jersey hung up in, or, you know, just, you know, go hang out or watch a game or two. That's what I love to do when I'm back home in New Jersey. But, you know, those were two, you know, really great special basketball schools. I wish they were around for all the talent that's in New Jersey now with the high school kids, but so they could carry on tradition. But just really two special high school basketball schools. You know, Patterson Catholic just had that certain swag dating all the way back since Tim Thomas, you know, always had great players, great teams. I wanted to be a part of that. And then when they closed down, St. Anthony's the same thing, just a big legacy, big time coach and Coach Hurley. And, you know, I thought he would get me ready, you know, best for the NBA.
Yeah, so let's talk about you when you're making the move to St. Pat's.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what do you remember with Coach Hurley talking in the preseason, talking about the team's goals and, you know, just everything that just comes with what's going to make y'all successful?
Yeah, so it was St. Anne's actually, and just you know, the story behind that, not a lot of people know that. Like, I was, you know, me and my dad were talking all season, and I was going to end up transferring to St. Anthony's that summer regardless. You know, even if Patterson Catholic happened to stay open, I was going to transfer out. And I really didn't want to. I made I had a lot of friends on the team at Patterson Catholic. You know, I loved everybody in the school. It was really close to me, really near and dear to my heart. So I really didn't want to transfer, but I knew it was best for my basketball career. And then when the school closed, it was kind of sad, but it was like, well, I don't have to break the news to everybody that I'm leaving. I could just head on over to St. Anne's. But I remember those first few practices with Coach Hurley, and, you know, everyone was really welcoming. We had played against St. Anthony's. We were like number 2 in the country. St. Anthony's wasn't even ranked, I don't think. And they beat us in the state tournament semifinal. So, you know, we were upset. They ended up losing in the final. So they were upset as well. So everybody that came back, plus Miles and myself coming from a different school, you know, we all had a bad taste in our mouth, and we knew what it took to win at that level. So we just got together and immediately gelled right away, immediately put the work in. And, you know, we tried our hardest to make it work, and it did. We were obviously very successful.
Yeah, that you guys obviously were. Obviously, the success was building. You know, you're coming up to this build-up of this non-public playoff game with St. Pat's. It's St. Anne versus St. Pat's.
Mm-hmm.
And the game's building up, and obviously, for me, from the media, is like that was one of the first games where people wanted watching the stream all over the country.
Yeah.
People were talking about it. I know it was in the middle of the week. It wasn't in the weekday. Mm-hmm. I do remember that. So, what do you really remember, like, when you started focusing in on the game? Obviously, you don't want to get tripped up. You don't want to lose before. And do you remember anything about that pregame or like actually getting ready for that game?
Yeah, I was just really, I mean, I knew we could beat the brakes off that team. I mean, I knew we were so much better than them. So we were just really hungry. Like we would talk about them every day during the season.
Wow.
We were just super hungry to play against St. Pat's. We knew they weren't as good as us. We knew they wouldn't put the work in. They had a great player, Mike Gilchrist. A few other great players on their team. I forget who's on that team. Dakari Johnson, the kid from DC, Chris Johnson, I think his name is. He was really good. Deshaun Suber. They had a lot of good players, but, you know, we knew they couldn't mess with us. So we were hungry to go against them. I remember being in the national anthem in that game. I just wanted to run through a wall. Like, I wanted to beat that team so bad. You know, everybody was giving them such big praise, and they were a good team. They were a really good team, but we knew they couldn't mess with us.
Got you. So, yeah, the game plan. So, you know, was that to slow Michael Kidd Gilchrist from the onset, or did that just kind of happen? You guys beat him pretty good 62-45.
Yeah.
You know, was that the game plan, or did you just slowed him down? He only scored 7 points, or did that just happen?
No, that just happened. I mean, obviously Mike was a really good player, and you know, we wanted to make it tough on him, but we didn't really have a special scheme or anything.
Sure.
You know, we didn't like seeing a lot of players get a lot of pub and get a lot of love. Mike was obviously the best player in the country at the time, and you know, shout out to him. He was great. You know, Mike is tremendous. But you know, we didn't like seeing a lot of players get all the love and get all that shine. Like we took that personal. So my teammate Lucky Jones, he really wanted to guard Mike, and he told us he was gonna lock him up. So you know, that we didn't really have a special scheme. We just played defense. You know, that was always our thing. We were going, and whoever was the best player on the other team, they were gonna have a long night with us.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's just capping as a team, not anything special. You know, in that game, like when it's over, is that like a big relief? Like, man, we got past that game, or was it like, nah, we're not done? It wasn't the last game of the season. Like, we're gonna keep this thing going, or was it like a big relief?
It was really like it was really like, you know, how we felt at the time. It was just really like, you know, we told y'all that this team wasn't better than us. Like we told everybody that, you know, we were gonna beat the brakes off this team. But we knew the real goal at hand. Like we wanted to win the TOC. We didn't want to lose that year. And you know, we just had guys that really took care of business. We had a lot of really good juniors and seniors that, you know, like the year before my sophomore year, they had beat us, Patterson Catholic, who was similar to a St. Pat's at the time, and then they lost the next game. So after St. Pat's, you know, we were excited, but we knew we had to focus on this next game to make sure we secure the state final in the next 2 games in the TLC. So we were really locked in on that TLC championship, winning the whole thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah. The next season, people forget, you know, y'all won 32-0. Did y'all ever think y'all gonna lose again? You know,
it was only one time against Huntington Prep in the middle of the 4th quarter where I was like, we might lose this game. Like Andrew Wiggins was unstoppable. I was just like, yeah, I don't know if we're gonna win this one. But we ended up winning that one. But it's funny, Coach Hurley was just really hard on us that summer, and was just, you know, he's like, you know, you guys aren't going to win it again. You know, I don't know if you guys are going to have another undefeated season. You know, he'd call me out. Kyle, I don't know if you'll be able to carry this team again. I don't know if you guys have it in you. That our senior class, our junior year, you know, those guys were tremendous. They were great in the classroom. They were great on the court. Like, you know, they played hard. My senior class was a different story. Like we were some knuckleheads, but we ended up gelling together and somehow, you know, coming away with a successful season. So it worked out.
Nah, that's funny. So like going in, so you leave St. Anne's, what was your mindset as a young man? And some of the stuff that you learned there, like what has any of that stuck to you to this day?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Coach Hurley has taught me a lot on the court and off the court. You know, yeah, I was always a guy that really hated school. So off the court, Coach Hurley really challenged me in the classroom, and I always appreciated that. You know, getting there my junior year, I thought it would just be basketball with him, but I kind of wasn't doing so well in the beginning of the year, and he pulled me to the side and kind of challenged me in the classroom. And, you know, I guess he knew I was competitive. I was going to take on that challenge. So, you know, he just really helped me as, you know, look, Kyle, you got to come to school. You know, your heart's in it. You might as well do well in it. So that's something I still take to this day. If it's something I'm going to take time, even if I don't enjoy doing it, if I'm going to take time and my heart's in it, I'm going to try to do it well. So that's something Coach Hurley instilled in me that, you know, go a long way with me. And kind of the same thing on the court, just, you know, Coach taught me how to play hard every possession. I feel I would, you know, kind of take possessions off, or, you know, maybe not take, I don't want to say not take the game as serious, but, you know, he kind of just took my focus and concentration to another level on the court, and just, you know, encouraging me to play hard every play I'm out there.
You know, you talk about, you know, not really liking school. Obviously, you were 5-star prospect in NBA. You had the goals early on. What's some advice that you give the young guys? Because that's stuff that, you know, kids deal with now, just dealing with classwork, even though, you know, they're not a fan of it. What's some advice you give players now, especially ones that are projected to be on, they see their names probably on like mock drafts in, you know, in years and, you know, all that.
Yeah, well, how I see it is, look, I'm gonna be honest, I've always hated school since I was a kid. I've never enjoyed it. I've never got the idea of homework. After school, I'm going to play basketball. Like, but I mean, it is super important. Like, you know, I didn't see the most talented guys be, you know, really good, but not being able to go anywhere because of your academics. And, you know, on the flip side, if you do want to be an NBA player or whatever you want to do in your life, you're going to have to do things that you don't want to do. So life is, to those young kids, like, life is just not about doing whatever you want to do. Like, you're going to have responsibilities in life. You're going to have to do a bunch of things you don't feel like doing. So you might as well do well in school early, take it seriously, develop great habits, you know, as to teaching your mind and body not to, you know, slack off or anything, but to do well at everything you do. And, you know, those good habits will take you a long way. I mean, I feel it's, you know, got me 9 years in the NBA.
Yeah.
Sure. Last question, Kyle, and we'll let you go. Your buddy Boz, you know, from Bishop Gorman, he was the National Player of the Year. You were kind of like the runner-up. We did the voting, actually, for Mr. Basketball USA.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't probably have a huge issue with that, I don't think. But, you know, Boz is your guy. But do you feel that you were slept on and people, like, focus, especially now with all the cameras and stuff, focus too much on highlights and big plays and stuff like that? You know, what was your thought about that?
Yeah. I did feel like that. And it's unfortunate that my brother Boz, you know, was the guy ahead of me. But I did kind of feel that way, and I always felt my way would. I don't want to put Boz down or anything. Like, Boz was tremendous. He was the National Player of the Year. He was really good our freshman year at UCLA. Like, I love Boz's game, and he impressed me when I got to campus at UCLA. Like, he was really good our freshman year and senior year of high school. But you know, I not that I ever paid attention to anyone else, any other players in my class. I always rooted for them, but I just knew my style of play would stick in the NBA, and I knew I would be able to play 10+ years. And not that I thought or knew or hoped that anybody else in my class wouldn't do well in the NBA. I thought I root for all those guys in my class, but I just knew, you know, my style of play. I always focused on my lane, and I knew my style of play would last a long time in the NBA, and I know I could go out there and make it happen. It's unfortunate a lot of guys in my class, you know, it didn't pan out, but you know, that's life. I still have great relationships with all those guys. If I see them, you know, go overseas, I'll watch their games. I'll root for them. Especially Boz. That's my brother right there. Like, I would never have anything bad to say about Boz. He was tremendous in high school. You know, tremendous at UCLA, and you know, I really enjoyed our time together. That's my brother for life. He can always call on me. So you know, I root for everybody in my class, everybody that I played at UCLA with. Like, I just want to see all those guys do well. But I knew, you know, when guys would put down my style of play, and like the guys who made the highlight plays, and I'd be like, you know, I don't know if that stuff will last long. I know what I do would last a long time. So you know, I did always feel that way.
Gotcha. Well, that's good advice, talking about what lasts long. And like you said, the main thing is you have to do things that you don't want to do to stick in the NBA. So we appreciate you giving people that advice. We appreciate you coming on. So thanks for coming on, Kyle, and giving your thoughts.
No problem. Anytime. I appreciate you, Ronnie. You always been good to me. I appreciate our relationship we've had. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it as well. All right. Take care, bud. Talk to you soon. Okay.
Well, I really enjoyed Kyle's Fab 50 stories and journey just about his team and kind of what he endured, you know, throughout his high school season. I really just felt encouraged by some of the stuff he said. I feel like a lot of our athletes that kind of tune into, you know, a lot of the things that Ball is Life has to offer, our podcast or, you know, whatever, could really take away a lot of the things that, you know, he kind of mentioned just about, you know, how he had to stay focused and lock in on the NBA, how he had to endure these practices with Coach Hurley, but he knew that the ultimate prize was, you know, his accomplishing his dream of playing professional basketball. You know, he talked about just kind of doing the things that he didn't want to do, but he had to do. So I'm just really, I really liked a lot of those points that he made. And I hope that our athletes can, kind of take away from that, seeing somebody that's in their position, somebody that's done and is currently doing what they want to do in the future, to kind of take note of that. So I just thought it was great. Great interview by Kyle. Happy that we were able to have him on the show. But let's continue to move on. And just in the spirit of having Kyle and him being, final number one, Fab 50 participate, I guess you could say his team finished number one. Let's look back at some of the final number ones that we've had in the 550 over previous seasons.
Yeah, Chelsea. When you talk about those, you see the St. Anne's teams. 2011, that's Kyle's team. 2008, they had a great team. Mike Rosario led in 1996. Anthony Perry led them, the guard. They were really good. And then 89 is kind of their flagship team in essence, and the coach. And it's crazy because that program is now closed. Coach Hurley kept it open for many years. The Miracle of St. Anthony's, the book by Woj. If you have a chance, go read it. That's what will kind of put Woj on the map a little bit. People obviously know him for the Woj bombs now, but he wrote that book talking about the program, and the 89 team set the tone. Bobby Hurley, Terry DeHare, Roderick Rhodes, 3 NBA players, and their big bruiser, Jerry Walker, was their foreman. You can't say enough about him. Obviously, Montverde Academy finished number 1 2 years ago in 220. We've talked about that team many times. Podcast number 62, the audio, go listen to it on Spotify, the In the Paint. We had guests. We had, Coach Boyle. We had Coach Smith from his 93 team, his first national championship team, which is his best team, even though he won't admit that. He'll say his 2004 team is. But, the 2004 team is great, too. It's one or two those guys, and they had some other great teams. But really, those 4 teams have kind of separated. We've had other teams finish number 1. St. John's Prospect Hall, 1998. Chino Hills, we talked about. We have to spend too much time, but wanted to show, as Coach Hurley, as Kyle mentioned, the work you got to put in the preseason to get there. And as Ani said, it's the defense. They held Michael Kidd-Gilchrist to 7 points in that big game, got him over the hump. They stayed focused, won their last games. That game was during the week, and then they won the TOC on the weekend. And you got to stay focused. Chelsea, that's to your point. Can a team lose? Well, you got to stay focused, especially if you're in the 16 to 30 range and you think you have aspirations to win the national title. You can't drop them. You can't drop a game you're not supposed to. And if you do, you have to rebound right away. So, shout out to all those champions. Again, you can go to ballslife.com and check out all of them. We have write-ups on all of them. But, the St. Anthony's won 4 times. What a program.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to remind our viewers to share our show, our YouTube link with Hoop Fans. Thank you so much for spending time with us. This episode will be live on Ballers Life Podcast Network. We are wrapping it up, but I just want you to know where you can find it later. It'll be a valuable resource all month long. So you can catch also the In the Paint show on Tuesdays during the season. You can listen to us on Spotify. We do this. You guys got to check back in with us later, but we really appreciate your time. We're almost wrapping up. We're almost to the end, but I just wanted to remind you where you can find all the content that we had for you today and just kind of future content. But let's keep it going, and we are going to move on to our teams that just missed the cut, the bubble teams. There was quite a few who we felt like could have been in the preseason rankings that just barely were eliminated. So I kind of want your thoughts, Ronnie and Ani, on the bubble teams that we had to exclude from this year's Fab 50 ranking. Let's see if we can pull those up.
Yeah, I'll start. Ani, obviously, those teams are well noted. Perry, Arizona, Pete, great young player, but AIA teams in Arizona haven't been hot out of state lately. They got to win some of those big games. They will at Hoop Hall West. I'll be there. I'm sure they'll have plenty of opportunity. But yeah, AIA teams have lost players to obviously, quite frankly, to AZ Compass Prep, to Hillcrest. Obviously, the Arizona independent schools are really good, and it's been at the cost of some. They come from somewhere, and some of them come from AIA schools. True Washington would be at a regular high school. So you look at that and it's affected those. So Perry has a chance. I like Perry. The Perry has a big game. on December 9th against Cardinal Hayes and our guy Ian Jackson. So at Hoop Hall West, we'll see. They win that game, boom, they're right there. End of story. Let's move on to the next team, Ani.
Right, yeah. Now we got Oak Cliff Faith family. You know, they're 4A, but they're loaded. They just barely missed a cut this year. Got to see how they're going to be, you know, as far as when they play against, you know, in these preseason against these higher level, these 5A, 6A schools, you know, being 4A in Texas, that's just kind of the down part about it. Like, it's not a good district. So your non-conference, you got to go, like a team like them got to go undefeated, but they're a team that's capable of. They're very loaded. They got Kid Dorian with Chekwu. They just picked up a guard coming from Oklahoma that has a chance to be a high major guard. So the Oak Cliff family has a lot of talent. They have to really do good in the non-district schedule because their district is so weak.
Yeah. Piggybacking off them, Oak Cliff will be at Tarkanian Classic. Obviously, if they get past Bishop Gorman, they gave them 2 good games last year, one down in San Diego, one there. They're going to be right there. They'll have a chance to be right there. Like you said, I thought that the 6A teams deserved a little bit more. With Beaumont United going up to 6A, right? Ani, they're about now in 6A, number 37, Beaumont. Then you got our guys, Lake Highlands. They play such a hard schedule. I thought they deserved it. Oak Cliff will be right there. I'm sure some of these teams are definitely going to get in. Obviously, we talk about Tarkanian. We talk about Oak Cliff, Gorman. That's naturally Liberty. Liberty, there's just no doubt about it. Liberty is going to have to do really well in the Tarkanian, then come back and do well at Damien Classic, the Classic at Damien after Christmas. That'll include some good teams, including number 30, 8 Sherman Oaks, Notre Dame. Again, if Liberty goes to the championship in one of those and wins the other one, they're right in. You know, I know Chelsea, you probably wondering, oh, well, Liberty. So that's basically it. They also have D-Don Thomas. Why are they behind Gorman? They're behind Gorman because they lost 2 great players, including the Coast State Player of the Year and Aaron Price as well. They lost him. And they lost Jefferson, who's at St. Mary's, you know, the big man. They don't have a big man like that. So they lost 6'7", they lost 6'9". They replaced it with 2 great freshmen, including D-Don's brother. But again, as Ani said, to get to the elite level, consistently win, to beat those teams, you got to show a little bit more rebounding. I thought maybe a little bit more, just a little bit more interior. Not that they can't, and not that they're not going to win some games, because they are. I think they're going to be very good. I wouldn't be surprised if I see them in the Fab 50.
Well, I look forward to seeing what happens with these teams, you know, kind of as we previously talked about in segment 1, that, you know, those last 10 teams from 40 to 50 really could have been up in the air. And I think we're going to see a lot of movement depending on wins and losses kind of as the season goes on. So these teams will definitely have a chance to creep in. But now I want to move on to the games to watch. We talked a lot throughout the show just about notable upcoming matches. I just want to hear your thoughts on games that you guys are looking forward to. And Ani, I want to start with you. What game do you see that you can talk us through a little bit that's kind of marked on your calendar that you're excited to see what happens?
Definitely that Duncanville and Lake Highlands game. You know, that's the rematch from the summer in TABC where they played at the circuit. That's going to be a big one. I'm really excited about that. That's like the first really big game in the state of Texas, and obviously that's a national level game. And then Thanksgiving Hoop Fest, where you have Duncanville versus Centennial, you have Cardinal Hayes versus Lake Highlands. You get to see Ian Jackson, get to see Jerry McCain, and just see this is a game of this. For me, it's the rematch. It's the Duncanville Lake Highlands. Even though y'all didn't get to see in the summer, that was like just a crazy atmosphere. Then seeing Duncanville and Centennial, you know, coming back to that.
And Ronnie, what about you? Do you have any games that kind of you have highlighted on your calendar that stick out to you?
Yeah, you know, we talk about AZ Compass wanting to be the national champ, having that national champ aspirations the last 3 years. They've been pretty close. So, boom, you got November 22nd, Montverde. And then you got November 23rd, Sunrise. They play 1-2 back-to-back right away in Utah. Not very far from their home base. Obviously, Montverde and Sunrise got to travel a little bit more, but that shouldn't be too big of a factor. They know each other. They know the personnel. Just a matter of who's going to win. Obviously, you know, maybe Montverde's what, a 1-possession favorite right now, if that. You know, if that. I mean, those teams are really, really good, as you can see in the fall. You know, I look forward. I see a matchup that really stands out to me is Modesto Christian, Corona Centennial, 12-3. Modesto Christian have to get by Bishop Gorman on November 25th. They're going to have to get it by Notre Dame the next night November 26th at the NorCal Tip-Off Classic. The game against Gorman's at the new Bishop O'Dowd event at the Bishop O'Dowd's new facility in Northern California. And then, boom, if they get by those two games, they got Corona Centennial number 9 on 12-3 in Sacramento. I'll be at that game. So, Modesto Christian, they wanted it. They got it. They come in at number 27. Great team. Jamari Phillips, BJ Davis, Prince Osea. My guy Bryce Fantasia does a good job. He loaded up the front end of the schedule, so he'll probably be ready for the back end, because the back end, again, in the NorCal Regional, he'll expect to get by those teams and maybe face a Centennial or face a Harvard Westlake in the state championship game. So, he's loading up at the beginning. Ani, what do you think? 1-2, 2-1? I know you don't think 3-0. What do you think?
I would say 2-1. I would say 2-1. It's hard to go 3-0.
Against those three teams. Yeah.
I definitely think they get 2 wins.
Yeah, no doubt. And then you look at Pick Central Centerville, rematch of the state championship. That 2 teams in Ohio's 2 best teams. I really like the fact that those 2 teams are getting after it early. And then a team that we didn't list on here is Centerville on the 3rd. Is got our number 13 team, Cathedral. So your guy Xavier Booker, Indiana. We Ben Davis we had on the bubble. Let's pull up the bubble again real quick. I think those are self-explanatory. We kind of talked a lot about those games actually during the show. We pulled up the bubble. Ben Davis number 2 probably in Indiana. Kokomo. We talked about Kokomo. I know it's a great town, Kokomo, Indiana, because of our guy Flores Budunga. Ani, we talked about Flores. We saw him at 3SSB. Ben Davis is right there. McEachern, we got to talk about those teams in the Georgia. We went with Grovetown. Grovetown comes in at 35. They're in 6A, but then you got all McEachern, Newton. It's 7A along with Wheeler. Some people would say Wheeler's pretty high, but they got their work cut out of them at 12. Whoever comes from the Georgia GSA Class 7A is going to be highly ranked. So, McEachern I wanted to mention. I want to mention Newton. Oak Ridge is going to be at Tarkanian. Oak Ridge, again, we talked about a state where you're 5, 6, 7 in the state. Are you going to be number 1 over a number 1 team state? Oak Ridge, our guy Steve Reese, a good buddy of mine, he's going to be fired up that he's not in, but he's going to have a chance to get in. They have a good team along with Mr. Christian down there. Little step below, the IMG Montverdes, but they have a chance. Providence Day is a good team in North Carolina. St. Rita, obviously, he's got to get by Kenwood and Simeon. Simeon's 29, Kenwood's 39, but St. Rita could easily be in. They got great personnel. And then we mentioned Gonzaga and DeMatha Catholic in that WCAC. Again, we have Paul VI 3rd. Ani doesn't think they're going to go undefeated in league. It's really hard to win on the road. Any of those 2 teams can be right in 38, 40 fast. And they probably, one of them probably will. Just a matter of who wins in league. So it's going to be a great season. And shout out to all the teams that I got over 150 questionnaires back, including many of these teams. Obviously, we can only rank 50. And obviously, it's tough. But, kudos to all those teams. Are all going to have a good season.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. I'm looking forward to seeing what's happening. A lot of elite prospects, a lot of head-to-head matchups. It's going to be fun. But so I ask you now, Ronnie, what's next? When can we expect the next updated poll? As I stated previously, all of this information is for you guys to go back and review on ballislife.com. Just click on the Fab 50 tab. You can find your team. You can find the schedule. You can find rankings. But as far as that goes, Ronnie, we want to know when the next poll is going to come out.
Yeah, the next poll, just to cut dry into it, we don't have to talk about any of the matchups. Me and Ani already did. After those big Thanksgiving matchups, November 28th will be the first regular season Fab 50 later in that evening. We got the regional rankings coming up on November 9th. So some of these teams we just talked about, those teams on the bubble will be in the regional. Obviously, it's just kind of like we do a bubble each week when we do the Fab 50. We rank about another 20. We don't rank them, but we have them on the bubble ready to jump in. And man, the teams are great. Any team that's, even close to the bubble, they can beat the brakes off of teams, kind of like our guy Kyle Anderson said. You beat the brakes off of just the average team. I think that's what we got to remember in this. The average team is still light years ahead away from some of these teams that are potentially being ranked. Those regional rankings will be on November 9th. Real quick I wanted to talk to you. We talked about Simeon Wiltshire, DJ. We talked about Xavier Booker, even the juniors, Trey, who we had on the show. We talked about Ian, Flory, Mr. Basketball USA. We're going to have our preseason tracker to come out on November 22nd before the first. And see, give me your thoughts. I mean, DJ was the junior of the year. Simeon, those two guys kind of got the most accolades. Some guys leave, maybe the younger guys. Then we have Boozer and Cooper Flagg. What's your thought on Mr. Basketball USA this year? Last year it was obviously senior, and most of the time it is seniors.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be seniors this year. But you got that 24 class got a lot of talent, and I can see it going to a higher level 2024 player this year, because the 23 class, like you said, you said it, and I agree. Yeah. The 23 class has a lot to prove.
A lot of proof.
And I think the 24 does, but I think the 24 class is better than that 23 class. So I think you can see a 2024 winner this year. I would not be surprised by that.
Wow. That's just to give you some perspective. Really doesn't happen very, very often. Last year we had great players. They're mostly seniors. The last junior to win is LeBron James in 2002. And then you go like Kareem and back in the days, it's just not many. But that goes to show you this 2020 class has to step up. I'm sure somebody's going to step up, whether it's Xavier Booker, whether it's our guy at Imhotep who's going to Kentucky, Justin Edwards. Somebody can step up. They're going to be in the mix. We don't know what the order is going to be. I think DJ's the leader in the clubhouse just because he was the junior of the year. But he wasn't by the junior of the month over. We got to talk about Ron Holland. Don't forget about Ron Holland. Now, they got a lot of pressure now. Stevie's not there. Ron Holland was right there. He got a lot of accolades, and he's going to go down as one of the most, highly honored Texas player, really, of all time, if they do good this year. And
absolutely.
It's very amazing. So that should be very interesting, only because it's wide open. It's not like we have a slam dunk, Lou Alcindor, LeBron type of player. So look for that on November 22nd.
I look forward to it, guys. Before we just wrap this thing up, let me just ask just a quick on the spot, hot seat type of question. I want Ani to give me the team that he thinks is going to exceed expectations and come out of nowhere. And I want a top 15 team. Just show love to a team that you think is going to make a crazy run and have a good Fab 50 season. And then on the flip side, Ronnie, I want to ask you a top team that you think is going to underachieve this season and maybe end up, significantly lower than what we have them ranked. So I'll let you guys ponder that really quickly. But I think that's a good way to kind of wrap up the show. So we'll start with you, Ani. What do you got for me?
I think Wheeler. I think Wheeler makes a big jump this year. I really like Isaiah Collier. I like the size that they have. I just think they have a lot to them with Jelani Hamilton, Ayrton Page, Cameron Brown. I think Wheeler makes a real jump this year. And then I wouldn't be surprised if they're top 5 this season. Wow. So, I think that's my hot take. That's me throwing everything out there. I think Wheeler can be a top 5 team in the country.
And I'll go ahead and jump in.
All right, Ronnie, talk to me.
The team on the
Don't
hot
be
seat.
biased, Ronnie.
On the hot seat. Yeah, it's got to be Camden. Because again, they're 7th. If they would have kept Coach Brunson, 31-year-old coach in that pressure cooker. Again, I like Malik Waynes. He's been around. I saw him play a lot in high school. Nothing against him, but it's a lot of pressure. And plus, the team could implode if this investigation reveals something. They're going to play good without. They don't care about that. Guys, no high school player cares about state associations. Let's just put it out. They don't give a
100%.
They don't care. They want to play, right? So that part is okay, but I just think there's a lot of pressure. I do think he's gotten the pole position as the top player in his class, but there's guys inching on his heels, and I just don't think they're going to, they didn't finish strong against Roselle. They weren't very good against Montverde. In the one big game they needed last year, we kind of showed a separation from there. Can't start them too much lower than 7 just because of where they are, but I think I could see Duncanville, Centennial, even our guys at Cathedral, having as good a season as them. I just think it's a lot of pressure. And they don't have the TLC no more, so they can't take a loss. Chelsea, yeah, they play Centennial. Okay, that's in January. They play Gorman. They're supposed to beat Gorman. So
Right.
how did they lose? You know, so again, if they lose one or two of those games, they don't have many to get back into the fray. You know, so that's where I see them. Again, you know, they have a good roster. I just think between them or Duncanville, the pipe's going to burst, so to speak. And because of Duncanville knows what they're up against, meaning they know PV's gone. They know they're going to probably be in the playoffs. They can prepare. They have the great front end of the schedule. They can take a lump or two. Whereas because they're in New Jersey, the season starts later. They practice later. They start later. Texas is rolling now. Texas is rolling now. In 1 week, they're going to be rolling. But New Jersey's much later, and I think that's a hindrance for Camden. And then there'd be no TOC's a hindrance, too, to play like a great team at the end. They have a lot of pressure in 1 or 2 games, and I think they're going to drop one. And I, you know, we'll see what happens. And good luck to Malik Waynes. He's got a lot cut out for him. And you know, again, you lose a coach, it's very difficult. So in the same boat as Duncanville in terms of losing a coach, but they've had a lot of turnover lately. So hopefully they can pull through. But I think they're going to drop 1 or 2. That's going to drop.
I think, and you talked about Duncanville, they're on my hot seat. Just with everything just going on, and they have a really tough schedule. This is a tougher schedule than they had last year, and the team's not as good as they were last year. And, you know, they're a talented group, but they're not as good.
Sure.
So they're on the hot seat. It can go either way with them, but you know, just some uncertainty in the air. You just don't. They know PV suspended, and they have the talent, but that schedule's rough. And with all the stuff going on, you know, it can potentially go down fast.
Sure.
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see how, you know, this season plays out. I'm sure we will be providing updates, you know, with the In the Paint show constantly on the podcast. But I just wanted to thank everybody for tuning in with us. I know it was a very long show, but I hope you guys enjoyed the content. This obviously was a special edition of the In the Paint show, and we were able to recap all 50 teams for you. I know we didn't get to talk about each and every one, but each team is featured on ballislife.com just as a reminder with the detailed write-up about everything in regards to head-to-head matchups, key players, schedules. We want to wish all of the teams good luck that we mentioned today, especially those that are on the bubble. I'm a fan of the bubble teams. I'm hoping that they're going to creep into the rankings as the season goes on. I know Ronnie and Ani don't get it right all the time. So I'm very excited, you know, to see how things play out, and may the best team win.
Yeah, I mean, the teams that win, again, we'll go over the list one more time as we let you guys go. We're going to log off now. Again, as Chelsea said, you know, watch the In the Paint show each week on Tuesdays. But for now, I think Chelsea, me, Ronnie, Flores, and Ani Umana, we're going to get out of here, let you watch these teams, take one last look at them, and we're going to log off.
Bye, guys.
Peace.